Good evening, everyone. Today is Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. It is a regularly scheduled select board meeting. We're coming out of executive session, taking no action. I asked once, but I'll ask again. John, was this meeting properly warned?
Yes, Ian, it was properly warned.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move to approve the minutes. Jess?
I move that we approve the minutes of January 3rd, 2022.
Jess has made a motion to approve the minutes of January 3rd, 2023.
23? Typo in the minutes.
Is there a typo in the minutes?
There is.
Oh, okay. Should we?
I don't
Just note
see it.
that.
Where?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
right at
there
the
is.
top. Sorry, guys.
I
So-
don't see it either.
No, just on the title.
On the title.
But I don't. So making that.
Making that
change-
change.
With that one
So
change.
Jess, making that change, you move to approve the minutes of January 3rd, 2023. Any other discussion, board?
Oh, it's on the meat.
And I don't
Oh,
see any
that's
hands.
your,
That's correct.
that's your agenda. Sorry.
No worries. Any further discussion, board?
No.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries 5-0. Thank you very much. We'll move on to chair remarks. All right, just have a couple. First, petitions are still available with
Recording in
the.
progress.
Petitions are still available at the town clerk's office for RTM rep, town officials, school officials, and they're due by the 31st of January. They require different amounts of signatures from
I
residents.
think it's the 30th.
30th?
Yeah, it is the 30th.
Oh man, I got the date wrong a second time. Oh man,
September, April, June.
it's due the Monday the 30th.
The 30th.
Monday the 30th. Okay, my apologies. Due Monday the 30th. So if you're interested, you still have time to go to the town clerk's office and get a petition out. So good luck. Second, quickly is I just wanted to speak to the agenda setting committee. I speak this both for the community and also for the rest of the select board. Daniel and I, being on the agenda setting committee, are trying to utilize the consent agenda a little bit more. The idea being that if we can identify items that really don't really require a lot of board discussion and we can put them on the consent agenda, we leave room for those items that do require discussion. Always keeping in mind that the longer these meetings go, the less people are able to participate, and we want to try to keep these meetings as accessible as possible. And so that's what we're trying to do. And you see that reflected in this meeting, and you probably will in future meetings as well. As always, we can always pull items from the consent agenda and discuss them to ensure that if there is an item that we thought would be good to have on consent and ends up it wasn't, then we will absolutely have the discussion that we think is needed. Finally, one of the other items that I wanted to let the public know about for future agendas is I think we're going to try putting sort of a proposed time period for each agenda item for discussion. This is sort of a, it's going to be a work in progress, so we'll see how it goes. But I wanted to let people know about it to let them know about now before you actually saw an agenda that had those on it. And the idea will be that hopefully people can see those agenda items that they want to speak to, and they'll see kind of when we're proposing that they'll be on, and then they can come into the meeting at that time, because I know our meetings are long. Again, we're just trying to work on ways that we can make the meeting move at an efficient but effective and easy to access pace and get to all the things that the board needs to get to in a meeting. So with that, I end my chair remarks and I hand it over to John for manager's comments.
Thank you, Ian. I have one item tonight for you, and that is that the town manager's office's executive assistant will be sending out a poll to all town meeting members who are serving or are up for reelection this year regarding their interest in town-provided childcare at the RTM. She will be sending this poll from the email address jstickler@brattleboro.org, and all town meeting members, especially those interested in childcare at that meeting, should watch out for this email and try to get it back to Ms. Stickler as soon as possible. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much, John. Moving on to agenda item 5, select board comments and committee reports. Board members, any comments or committee reports?
Sure.
Jess?
I had the pleasure of attending the Charter Review or Charter Revision Commission. I'm not sure what the official title is.
It's both.
It's both. But it was just an organizational meeting last week for the new commission that's going to look at the document that guides how the town is structured and does business. And it's really fascinating, and I'm very excited. And they have another meeting on Thursday. They're getting started like a train, just charging right through. So I'm excited about that process and want to encourage folks, if they're interested in the structural shape of how the town operates at a very high level, check it out.
And do I understand that the next meeting is going to be like a reading of the current charter?
Yes, it is.
So if you want to listen to
that's
somebody,
exciting.
want to listen to a bunch of people.
Exciting.
Oh, actually, we have a member in the audience, so we'll see a head nod. Yeah, thank you very much, Jess. That is really exciting, and thank you for being there to watch it. Other board members? Liz?
As consistent with your remarks regarding the consent agenda, I wish to pull item 7E to have a discussion.
Absolutely. I'll note it now, and I'll just note it again when we get to the consent agenda. But yep, consent agenda item E, emergency demolition at 9 Elliot Street, parentheses McNeils Brewery. You got it. Tim.
I'll second that. No, I won't, because we don't do that. I just wanted to, since you did mention the trying out of the times, thank you. I'm excited about that idea. And I just wanted to add on the additional advantage that I see with that is not only does it help people see approximately when an agenda item might be coming up in the estimation of leadership, but it also allows our chair to help us keep on task, knowing that we're over 5 minutes, over 20 minutes, under 10 minutes. You know, it really does help, I think, set the pace of the meeting a little more efficiently. So
Absolutely.
that's all I have.
Thank you, Tim. Any other more comments? Nope. Okay. So we're going to move on to public participation, agenda item 6. So this is an opportunity for public to speak on items that aren't on the warrant agenda, or to ask a select board member to pull an item from the consent agenda. So with that, I see a hand in the public. Come on up and just state your name and where you're from for the record, please.
Dick DeGray, whatever district I'm in.
Yep. Hi, Dick.
Used to be 2, thank you. Quick question. The item that you just pulled from consent agenda,
Yes.
how did you think that was a consent agenda item? That's a pretty entailed discussion. And, you know, if someone didn't ask to have this pulled, that would have just been read it, raise our hands, and put them down. I think this item here deserves consideration from the public and the opportunity to ask probably Attorney Fisher some questions about the whole thing.
Yeah, I'll speak to it now for very briefly, and then we can talk about it at our TM or at the consent agenda item, and we can also talk about it when we discuss it. But we were moving through the items that were just warning articles for RTM, which will involve lots and lots of discussion at RTM. This was one of the items. I think having seen the backup material that came with this article, which I hadn't seen when we were looking at the agenda items, I agree with you that it's a good thing to pull and to have a discussion about. But just to really pull the curtain back on what we were thinking, it was just, if you look at the other items that are on here, there are other articles that are going to be considered for RTM. And as you'll see, agenda item 8C is also an article for RTM, but that was also one that we thought really would warrant some discussion now. And so having seen the additional backup material for consent agenda item 7E, I agree with you, and so I'm happy to pull it. You know, I think that the final point is just, as we try to use the consent agenda a little bit more, I think occasionally we'll be wrong, and there are items that we really should have discussion, and that's why we have the safeguard of pulling things.
Item 2, I'm not sure how many of you are aware, we had several break-ins downtown last night around 4 o'clock. Penelope Weir, The Lounge, and Brown and Roberts. Again, I have asked you for cameras to get installed downtown. I think it is a critical tool for the police department. Obviously, it wasn't the gentleman who just got arrested because he's in jail. So maybe his brother, I don't know who. But, as we said back here in November when the merchants were downtown, a lot of them have insurance, but most of them have $500 deductible. It's really an invasion of privacy and the cost. And I believe you really have to revisit that issue. And I think cameras are an essential tool for our safety, for the people downtown and the people visiting, and for the merchants who contribute greatly to the well-being of our community in terms of financial gain. And lastly, I want to shout out, or just say, thank you, Mary Giamartino, for all of your years at Hotel Pharmacy. It was a staple downtown. I knew her son, Nick. He went to school with my daughter. She lost him. He was a junior in high school. And then losing Frank, who was a spirit in himself, just a great community member, a huge Mets fan, and never went in there without a smile and a joke. And they are all going to be missed downtown. And I wish Mary nothing but the best. And I thank you for everything she's done for Brattleboro and the surrounding communities.
Thank you very much, Dick.
Thank you.
Looking to I see a hand, but I can't really see the name.
I believe it's Eli.
Yep. Eli,
Sure, the
just
last.
state your name and where you're from for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Eli Coughlin Galbraith. I'm from Brattleboro. I'm a member of RTM and I'm on the Finance Committee. This is Nico, by the way.
Nico.
I'd like to ask the Select Board to reconsider the decision to hold an in-person representative town meeting this year with no hybrid option for 2 reasons. First is I reviewed the minutes of the January 3rd meeting in which this was discussed, and I see that Select Board members were asking what the opinion of RTM members was. But it seems like no one actually checked the minutes of last year's RTM. And there is a motion passed near the end of that night in March. Page 12 of the minutes, we passed the following motion. RTM recommends that the 2023 RPM be held in a hybrid format and offer ways to attend in person or virtually, while also having a Zoom option made available to the public, with a Zoom co-host assigned to assist with the virtual aspect of the meeting, with details to be developed by Select Board. This motion passed 80 in favor and 8 opposed. So if your decision was based on the preferences of RTM, I wish you would take this into account. The second reason is one of selection bias. I would like to suggest there were multiple members, RTM members at the January 3rd meeting who spoke to you in favor of in-person meetings. I would like to suggest that the people who are there speaking to you in favor of in-person meetings are by definition the members of RTM who don't have a problem with in-person meetings. Those of us who have at-home obligations and COVID concerns are less likely to be able to come and speak to you in person, much as I would like to. I know at least one candidate this year who is no longer going to submit an application. She doesn't want to be a part of it anymore because she can't swing an all-day meeting in person. And honestly, I may not be able to either. I've managed to attend hour-long masked finance committee meetings with 6 people in them, but a day-long indoor meeting with 250 is more COVID risk than I really want to bring home this year, in particular during the rise of the latest treatment-resistant variant, which, we'll see how that's developed by March. I know there were folks with a lot of different problems with Zoom last year. One person called in from a beach and then had trouble with their signal. I really hope that we can all take last year as a learning experience to improve what remote options we have, because for some of us, it really is the safest and best option available, flawed though it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eli. Yep.
Please excuse me in advance. I have severe ADHD and anxiety. My name is Laura Janiszewski. I live here in Brattleboro. I moved up from Western Mass in 2015, and I don't want to move back. So I would like to bring up part of the pretty well-known housing crisis in Brattleboro. I am on disability. I'm unable to earn more than a certain amount of money a month above that to live comfortably. Frankly, I've called senators about that, but that's a separate issue. My issue is my landlord, Robert Remy Powers. And I will say this is the beginning. You'll be hearing from me a lot more. I will tell you, I've lived in that building in 2 different apartments for 4 years and 5.5 months. Mr. Remy Powers has repaired exactly one thing I asked him to repair, which was a leaky sink pipe that he wrapped in duct tape. Since then, he has had excuses and some various very illogical reasons why he was unable to make various repairs. Some minor, some not so much. One of the big problems is that the entire building is infested with bed bugs. They are in the walls. There are folks, for some reason, who don't believe bed bugs live in walls. And Bob I can't prove this is my word, but Bob has said to me that he does not believe bed bugs travel between apartments, and they don't, and they won't, because once they find blood, they stay there. I think I convinced him once that they can travel through the cracks and gaps in a huge old house, but I'm not sure that he stayed convinced. So I tend to ramble. I apologize. Over 1.5 years, I have been asking for my stove to be replaced because the oven will turn on by itself if you turn it all the way off. He said he could not afford to replace it. At the time, I had received a small inheritance from my uncle passing. I offered to purchase a stove and deduct it from the rent. In a voicemail, which unfortunately I was unable to save, he told me that he could not afford for me to buy a stove and take it out of the rent. After more arguing and discussion, eventually Mr. Remy Powers frustrated me into saying, fine, I will fiddle with the knob to make sure the oven does not turn on by itself until you can replace it. Recently, he has been claiming that I didn't report it until after I was unable to pay rent in September. But before that, he claimed I said the stove was fine, when I actually said, fine, I'll fiddle with the knob for now. So he still hasn't taken care of the bed bugs, the stove. 4 hours of texting yesterday. I finally got him to say he would send an electrician over to look at the stove to make sure it was actually turning on by itself and was a fire hazard. He implied he did not believe me. He needed a professional to assess it. I said, fine, that's fine. What time tomorrow?
Right.
What time? He said 11. I asked AM or PM. I said, if it's AM, I can't let you in because you won't be able to give me 24 hours written notice, but the electrician can come in. He said, okay,
Laura?
I'll show up with the
Laura?
fire chief. Yes,
I'm just going to ask you to.
Yeah, okay. Long story short, I live on the top floor. I can see the parking lot. An electrician showed up at 11, approximately 11 a.m. No one ever knocked on my door. The electrician left. I asked Bob why. Bob told me the electrician was afraid to come up to my apartment because he was afraid of me. I called the electricians. They said they could not gain access. I talked to the assistant fire chief who told me they were actually there for a different apartment. I called the electricians again. They said they were not told which apartment they were there, that they were just to meet Bob. So, long story short,
Yep.
he told me an electrician would be there at 11 a.m. and then did not allow the electrician to come up to my apartment to look at the stove to confirm I have a fire hazard. Among many, 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 many other issues with the building, which is in severe disrepair and I've heard is very possibly going to be condemned soon. I've been looking for a place. I want out of there as soon as possible. Sorry.
Sorry.
To conclude, again, my name is Laura Janiszewski. Anyone who has been affected negatively by Bob Remy Powers, my phone number is 413-269-1070. I prefer texts. My email is Lima, Adam, Victor, Adam, Juliet, Indigo, November @gmail.com. Please get a hold of me because there will very likely be a class action lawsuit in the future. And this is the beginning of my crusade against Bob Remy Powers. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And I don't see any more hands on Zoom, and anyone else in the room? Seeing none, we're going to move on to agenda item 7, which is the consent agenda. So, Board, I'm just going to repeat Liz's request to pull agenda item E, which is the emergency demolition at 90 Elliot Street, McNeils Brewery, authorized article for RTM warning. If everyone agrees to pull that, then we're going to look at just consent agenda items A through D, and I would ask that John speak to them briefly.
Yes, so we have 4 items then for you to consider on consent, items A through D. The certification of highway miles that you do every year is the first item A, and if approved, will be used by V-Trans to determine state assistance to the town. Item B is the annual contract renewal with the town attorney, which would be executed for a 1-year term at $120,586 upon your approval. The next item is your appointments of town clerk, town attorney, and town treasurer to be ratified at town meeting if you approve the consent agenda. And lastly, item D, if approved, would authorize an article for the town meeting warning regarding a loan from the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Program in the amount of $1,855,000 for the Phase 1 Water System Improvement Project.
Thank you very much, John.
Yep.
Board members, any other items you wish to pull? No. Seeing none, I'd look for a motion. Daniel?
I move to approve the consent agenda as
As modified.
as modified. There we go. Thanks a lot.
Daniel has made a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries 5-0. For those following along at home, new business agenda item 8. So there's an error in the agenda. It's A, B, C, D. It should be E, and then last item is going to be F, and that will be the emergency demolition at 90 Elliott Street. So we're going to move on to new business, which is agenda item 8A, the monthly financial report. So I'd invite Kim to join us at the presenters table. Welcome back.
Evening.
Good evening.
So in your packets, you have our 6-month financial report as of December 2022. It has all of the town's funds, which is the general fund and the 2 enterprise funds, the utilities and parking funds. There is a separate report for each fund, and it reflects the revenues and expenditures of the budget through each account. So with 50% of the fiscal year complete, below are the statistics by fund. The general fund expenditures are 55.6% of the annual budget. When we prorate expenses that were paid in full, we are at 47.6% of the annual budget. The utilities fund is at 50.6% of the annual budget, and the parking fund expenditures are at 48% of the budget. I've put on there, as requested, the revenues and expenses in total of each fund. And we have all of the other reports that we include each month, which is the loan report, shows a balance of $4,165,335 in outstanding loans issued through the town's various loan programs. The town's revolving loan fund report shows a balance of $182,738 in available funds for grants and loans. The grant report contains information on 25 active grants and 5 grants in the application process. And the fund balance report contains updated balances of all the town's funds as of the date of this report.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kim. Board members, questions, comments? Liz?
Kim, you say that the parking fund has expenses well in excess of revenues. And I submit that that's an issue that the Select Board needs to address in all its ramifications sooner rather than later. And I think that there's a variety of policy discussions and options that come with that discussion that we should put on our agenda.
Daniel?
Is that something that you want to have on the agenda before we look at the new parking budget in June?
Yes, because I think that there's decisions that need to be made about the future of the transportation center and its renting and its, various viability and policy options that need to be discussed before we make any sort of June decision.
Okay.
For example,
Thinking about like upcoming agendas, it's hard for me to imagine getting to that.
it doesn't have to be, let's say, before town meeting, but it
Okay.
certainly should be before we make the decision. And I think it should include things like a substation in the transportation center, a public restroom in the transportation center, all these things that are swirling around and how they may or may not affect renting and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense, Liz, and appreciate your flexibility on the scheduling of it. We're doing our best.
I know, yeah.
Great. Yeah. Other board members, questions or comments? Jess? Yes.
While we're on the parking budget, I was curious. Last meeting we discussed the maintenance and custodial time, and that the parking fund was paying for a full-time person, but only reaping the benefits of maybe 0.4 or 40% of their actual work hours. I'm curious if this financial report sort of reflects the reality of how that person's being used, or if it reflects just what we were.
The answer to that question is in item E.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. Are you foreshadowing item new business agenda item AE3?
No,
Or-
I'm just curious how the current situation is represented.
Kim, do you feel confident enough in our question to?
So I think I do, and Patrick, you can back me up, but I think that is brought forth into the fund through the transfers, the custodian through payroll. Nope.
Swing and a miss. So in the general fund, there are 3 from the facilities maintenance team, and in the parking fund, there is 1. And that's actually more accurate to work assignments. We now know this week than we did last week, after some further analysis that'll get discussed under new business under the budget. But what I can tell you is the accounting reflects actual division of labor.
Awesome. That was absolutely what my question was.
That answers. Yep.
I have a couple other ones.
Please. Yeah, absolutely. Can we just, if you do me a favor, just referring to a page number would be very helpful if you've got a page
right.
number.
Sure. Page 1, the opioid settlement revenue. I'm just unfamiliar with what that is, and
What
Can we
line?
pass over
Oh.
Attorney Fish? Yeah.
If you want there, I can answer that. The town is part of a class action with regard to the going after a myriad of opioid manufacturers, distributors, et cetera. But the revenue that you're speaking of was a settlement that through the Attorney General's office that the town elected to take part in, which means we can't double dip in against those same defendants. But that was a nationwide settlement between attorneys general and I believe there were 4 manufacturers and distributors in that particular settlement, which is reflected in that revenue that you see in the report.
And if memory serves, the board ratified or made that decision about a year ago, maybe a little
That's
over a year
correct.
ago at this point? Yeah.
Yep, and then there were, I think, 1 or 2 payments. The first payment, I think, came in August, September. I'm not sure if we've received the second one, but I believe there were 2 payments.
Thank you very much, Bob. Next question?
Oh, just
Or does
curious
that
what
answer the
the
question?
sum, what the total of that, was it gonna be $10,169 or was it?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I
We
could
can find that out.
research that and get back to you on that.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask a related question?
Do you want to
I'm
finish?
gonna jump topics, so.
Okay, yeah, please.
There are other lawsuits for opioids that we are still a party to?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Jess?
Sorry. I was also curious about the HR department. The fact that we're at 78% of what the budget. I'm just curious about how that's going, how that's gotten so high, if it's expected to continue to be higher than
Page number?
page 4.
Thank you.
So 2 of the things off the top of my head with HR and Sally is here if you would like her to discuss it, but payroll has now since been moved to HR. So that was just about a couple of months ago. So all those expenses for Kronos will be moved out of finance, moved into HR. And employee recognition,
Can you just
What was
repeat what
so
Kim
she,
said?
that's the TM search.
Town manager search?
Yep.
All right. And then another question about fire department revenue, page 2. It's about the rental housing fees. I believe that's fees for when landlords aren't in compliance. No, that's not. Could you?
AC Kier, if you want to speak to that for a moment.
Yeah, so the rental housing fees are associated with each unit apartment is charged $75 for the initial inspection. There's our other further fees that go along with that, but essentially $75 per unit is where that money's derived from.
All right, and I noticed the budget is 16% of, what we allotted for the year for that. So I'm wondering if that means that we're behind on rental inspections or doing them, or?
Nope, we are pretty much on point where we need to be. We did have a lull there where we lost Inspector Davis for about a 2-month period, and then we hired Inspector Nelson. He's up to training and running, so there was a lull there, and we should be catching back up, but I expect we'll finish the year right on point.
Thank you very much.
That's all for now.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Jess. Tim?
Yeah, just if you don't mind, let me dive back into the parking fund revenue,
Yes.
which is on page 1 of 2 of the parking fund, which is separate sheets. Just to sort of further elucidate sort of Liz's point about a future discussion, I'm trying to remember, and I don't know if anybody has these numbers, but the percentage here is based on an already adjusted budget, certainly when it comes to parking meter revenue. Who recalls whether that has already reached previous levels or not? That's what I'm just trying to. The budget for it that's listed here is $365,000. We had a time period where we had adjusted it much lower, and then we brought it back up, by my memory.
Yep.
Do you recall what normal was before pandemic?
My recollection is that this was equivalent to the last pre-pandemic year.
I guess it would
That's
be in
my
the big
recollection.
budget. It would be in the big budget document. I could actually do my homework and look that up. Okay, and next question is, does parking stickers apply only to the parking garage, or is it all stickers for all lots?
It's all lots.
Okay. Do we have that broken out?
We do.
Okay. Because certainly that would be good to have if we were ever going to take a deep dive into impacts.
Yeah, when we talk
Effects.
about yeah, absolutely.
Right, right. And then I guess I have my own question that I should be able to answer myself about whether that is uncharacteristically low or not. Or do you recall if we brought that back up?
Which line?
The parking stickers, permit
The permits?
stickers.
So permits are, permit revenue occurs irregularly. There are some permits that are sold for 1 month or maybe 2 months, but there are a large body of permits that are sold quarterly. And so December is the next month where permit revenue would get recorded, and then it would be shown to you in the January. So,
Right.
so, yeah,
I was just curious on,
yeah, it should be a little higher, I would think, because this is inclusive of that. But, yeah, we're behind. People are buying less permits. I think some of that could be the transportation center, honestly. But we could take a deeper dive, and sounds like we will.
I think for that next discussion would be
Yeah.
vital.
John, take a note of that.
Yeah, I
Thank you very
took a
much.
note of
Excellent point, Tim. Thank you. Daniel?
Yep.
Oh, did you have anything else?
No, I'm good. Okay. I think so.
Just want to jump on that parking discussion. So not only could we get granular about like which lots people are buying permits or not buying permits for, we could also get granular about meters. I'm assuming we could probably get
Extremely granular.
yeah, extremely granular. But it would be interesting to see, since we've had these new meters, right? Like they have the ability to presumably
We can report
report
back
what their
per
revenue
pole.
is per pole, right?
Yep.
And like, if that is not an awfully arduous task, I'd actually like to see that kind of data.
Oh my God.
In advance of discussions about the parking fund and revenue and so forth, because, we should be able to say, this lot's doing great, this street's doing great, these ones used to do great and now they do terrible. And we should be informed by those pieces of data, not just kind of, fumbling around in the dark. So that's my request from the parking fund. And if we can do it, great. And if we can't, I'd like to hear about it. And now I'd like to move on from parking to fire.
Fire, yes.
Very good.
Back to page.
Page 9 of 16 in the general fund.
Yeah.
Specifically, the fire overtime line. Just kind of keeping a close eye on this. So we budgeted 102,000. That was in a different world. And we have expended $220,670 thus far this year. We're 50% of the way through the fiscal year. So I, being the lay financial analyst that I am, I did very complicated math where I doubled the expenditures from the fire department and tried to, imagine what we're going to look like at the end of the year. And obviously that's not how things will shake out. It'll be much more complicated than that. But, we're likely to be over budget in that department by, say, 300,000. I had $330,009 in my calculation. And so my question really is, in the event of that happening, is there enough slack in the rest of the general fund to accommodate it? Which actually kind of foreshadows, I think later on, I believe that there is, but I'd like to hear it from somebody who has more financial acumen than I do.
Well, I do think that there will be room within other parts of the budget to withstand this piece of the budget going over. I don't think that the overtime is going to continue on the trajectory that it is. I mean, I've spoken to the chiefs and, there was a bit of this overtime being, COVID-related, FMLA-related, short shift related, that we're hoping to see it take a little bit of a dive coming up. So hopefully we will not be on the, adding 50% going towards, to the end of the year. I do feel that in other budgets, there will be room, such as, our police budget, where we don't have as many policemen as we budget for.
Yeah. And I guess, for the public, it's worth pointing out that whilst we're 50% of the way through the fiscal year, we're at 47.6% of expenditures. So there's already, as you can see,
There's already
a little bit.
room.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Jess?
I have a question on the second to last page of what you've included. It's something called housing stabilization under the town manager's office, specified as mortgage and rental assistance, which expires June 30th, 2023.
Okay.
Second to last page of the full document. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay. It's the fourth line down in the second graph. Third line down. Sorry.
So this was a grant.
This is a grant.
It's a grant. So I'm just curious, it's $774,646. I'm just curious what it is.
What that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest with you, that's a grant that I worked on with Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust. But I wouldn't be able to speak to the scope of it, just sort of off the cuff. I could certainly send you the memo that described the project and I could get that to you, but.
Liz?
I think I remember Bruce Whitney coming here and discussing it with us, and it's part of the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust.
Not pass through, right?
And they, they provide mortgage and rental assistance to many people in the two-county region that they've worked for. But I can certainly.
Yeah, I think I'm just curious about why it is still money with us, or the report seems to reflect that it's still held by the town.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll look into that.
Okay.
Good question.
The other question, the last question.
Yep.
Less of a question, just we have a rental housing development fund. The town of Brattleboro, I believe, provides individuals grants to create apartments in their homes. Is that what this line is on the final page of your report?
No,
Not a
No.
part of
no. Are you talking about the rental housing improvement program?
It's on the very, very last page,
That's on the
And it's
fund
just
and it says
40 rental housing.
Development Fund.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
40,
Yeah,
rental
fair.
housing.
71,000.
And it's $71,000. So I'm curious what that,
I think it is. Is it the rental
The
housing
apartment
improvement?
in homes?
that's what I.
Yeah.
So it is. So the town has $71,000 in grants available for folks to create apartments in their homes?
We don't know. I don't know, but we can find that out and get you that information.
All right.
If it's the apartments and homes, it's been the one that's been a little underutilized lately.
It absolutely has.
But
Kim,
there's
correct
a
me if
reason
I'm
for
wrong,
that.
but all three of those component parts are essentially a wash back and forth, right? We've got the town has a revolving loan fund.
Correct.
From the revolving loan fund, there are a series of programs that can feed from the revolving loan fund. There's the Small Business Assistance Program, the Rental Housing Improvement Program, and the Disaster Relief Program. You could look at the bottom line balance of available resources and say it's any of those. Does that make sense?
Right.
Because you've got more than one animal feeding from the same trough.
Okay. Does that make sense?
I'd like a little more discussion at our next meeting, perhaps.
Or next financial report.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change
Yeah.
much about this grant.
It would just be very interesting to know what resources are available around housing, particularly in our
Of course.
housing crunch.
Yep.
There's a good pamphlet.
Yes.
Okay, my only question was, board, would you find it helpful if we could get like one set of page numbers on this full document? Is that
Yes.
possible,
Yes.
Kim?
Is it?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Oh, on the front, just.
Sort of
financial.
paginated, sort of like in one. So what we have currently is, and I'm kind of thinking more about people who are looking at this on like a PDF.
it's 3 or 4
And they're
different
kind of scrolling through trying to find where we're talking. If there was a page number at the bottom that sort of went through the whole document, it would be easier to reference.
No problem.
That's my only.
If you're not careful, Daniel will start requesting pie charts.
I know. Well, we're not going to get quite there.
Interesting that you mentioned.
Something wrong with pie.
Any hands from the public? Don't see any. So board, absent additional questions. Yes, Dick, come on up.
I do believe that's, I certainly remember that on the board. Actually, Byron Stuckey was a big proponent and got that started in the town of Brattleboro. So I know that there's money available. I want to go back to the parking budget. I was here, I think, over a year ago. Might have been last June or May when you adopted the budget. I had concerns about the enterprise fund is not a loss leader fund. And when it's a loss leader fund, the taxpayers have to pick up the money that is lost in it. And we did that through the pandemic. And if we weren't losing money, that money could have gone to other projects in the municipality. And when you look at the transportation rental income space, is the rental income $635 for the year, or is that, what is that? I think that's the number, let me,
That's probably year to date.
684? Is, how much rent is being paid by the contractor utilizing that space? And I agree with Liz that this whole fund needs to be reexamined sooner rather than later. And then when you look at Hood income, it's projected at $5,000 and it's actually $780. One would say, what is your best guess on why we're not even close to 50% with Hood rental in the downtown area? I would also mention that, and your approval of Gallery Walk shutting down Elliot Street and the Harmony parking lot has a huge impact. Now, that's a great event, but it has a huge impact that I hope that changes because that's having an effect on the bottom line. And, you know, you can do that once a year, but when you're doing that every month for 8 months, that has a huge financial impact, and along with other things that when you bring up this discussion, I want to get into that. But I'm really concerned about this, and I applaud Daniel for looking at the lots. I think we're giving our parking away. compared to other municipalities. And it's just a sad reality that you have to pay for the services that you're providing. And if we can't cover expenses, then we have to raise our rates or we go out of business. And so I know that Tim Wessel had talked about, after a discussion we had, about possibly unloading the transportation center, selling it, getting it off our books. I know that I would love to be a part of that discussion. And so when you have the discussion about the enterprise fund, that should also be something that you at least have a conversation about. Whether you do it or not would be good to hear what you have to say about it. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dick. And I think, I echo that. Those are all things that we should consider when we discuss the enterprise fund prior to the June discussion of that budget. Any other? Not seeing any other hands from the public. Board, as I was saying, absent any further discussion, I'd look for a motion. Jess.
I move that we accept the financial report as presented.
Jess has made a motion to approve the financial report as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Kim, thank you so much for the presentation. Really appreciate it. All right, we're going to move on to new business agenda item 8B, which is the monthly EMS update. And I invite up to the table Chief Howard and AC Kier. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening. Assistant Chief Kier will update you on his report.
So as always, thank you for having us up here for the EMS report.
Absolutely.
So the Brattleboro Fire Department responded to 395 calls for service. Of those 395 calls, 289 calls were response with an ambulance. This goes to show, to date, this was our busiest month as December. During the previous update on December 13th, 2022, when we discussed how other departments handle complaints of service, specifically in regards to EMS service. At that point, we received 2 complaints. One we addressed with you folks. The second one we hadn't had an opportunity to review yet. Speaking with Dr. Storn and Dr. Swozy, they're actually quoted in here, but they support the increased transparency and responsibility to the people of Brattleboro, but medically specific questions should remain in the preview of protected legal status as a form of quality assurance and quality improvement meetings, of which we hold regularly. Generally regarding operations such as staffing, use of red lights, and other similar issues seem reasonable to have in a public meeting such as this. So I'd ask that you respect that, maybe the public can respect that, and that we handle the complaints accordingly as per Dr. Storn and Dr. Swozy. December brings to a close of a new year. Typically in the EMS world, that means new protocols to look at and adjust nationwide. Protocols are adjusted through the holistic approach of what is working and what is not. The providers and clinicians at Brattleboro Fire have been up at the Vermont EMS Academy, along with doing online training and working with Dr. Storn to make sure that they are well aware and adjusted to all of those protocols that will be taking place effective January 1 or have taken place. A little update on where we're at with our paramedics. Our paramedics are about halfway through their program at the EMT Academy in Chicopee, Mass. We also have 2 other providers in EMT classes, one at the Bennington Rescue Squad who just graduated that program and should be getting his EMT license very soon. And the other EMT is at the Vermont EMS Academy in Newfane, Vermont, and he's about halfway through that program. Switching gears a little bit with data, we learned from the AP Triton study that we need to adjust our data to better represent a more statistically accurate response to how things work. This month, we've adjusted that, and we've also included an 80th percentile response time and a 90th percentile response time, and you'll see those represented in this report. Along with that change, you also see a change in the data collected. Previously, we were collecting, we were rounding to the number If it was a 4-minute response or 4 minutes and 20 seconds, you may see a 4-minute response. If it was you get the picture. We're now adding those seconds in there so that we can better see a better response and maybe a declining response, hopefully not, but we'll better see that month to month in that. When I think it's also a notable point. So you're going to look at the 80th percentile time and the 90th percentile time, and those of you that are deep into the AP Triton study, you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? That's a 6-minute and 11-minute response versus what we are looking at now is an 8 minutes and 46-second response. To clarify that point, AP Triton did that study on emergency responses only. So cardiac arrest, things that required lights and sirens from the get-go out of the station to the destination. So that's what they were looking at. The numbers that we've collected to this point, the 8 minutes and 46 seconds, so to speak, that's representative of the 1,554 calls that are, yes, they are that cardiac arrest, but they are also that stub toe. They are also that I've fallen and I can't get up. That's those calls that don't require the red lights and sirens out the door. So that's why you see a little bit difference in number there. Don't freak out, but what it is important to know is that we need to, as we look to goals to how we are going to set our response time, think about, do we want to account for all responses or do we want to account for just those emergent responses? Something to think about as we move forward. As I said, the rest of the data statistics pulled from July 1 to December 31st, 1,554 calls. The average time of the call is 27 minutes, 57 seconds. The need for 2 ambulances is 157. The need for 3 ambulances is 28. The need for mutual aid is 2. Transported patients, 694. The average response time, 4 minutes and 13 seconds. The 80th percentile response time is 7 minutes and 7 seconds, and the 90th percentile response time is 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Total invoice by Golden Cross is $527,863.20. Total collected is $316,913.44. And that concludes the December report.
Thank you very much, AC Kier. Board members, questions, comments? Daniel?
Couple of clarifying questions. So in Dr. Storn's quote here in the report, he says use of red lights. I have a feeling that doesn't mean like traffic lights on the street.
No, it definitely means the red lights on top of our fire trucks, when we use them, when we shouldn't use them. Did we run through a stop sign without stopping with our red lights on? Those are all things that, if they happen, would be addressed publicly and appropriately.
Okay.
It's responding to emergencies.
Okay.
with red lights.
All right. Very good.
We don't respond to every emergency with red lights.
Yes. Yeah. I've seen that. Paramedic numbers. So we've got, did you say 2 providers currently in training?
So we currently have 2 paramedics and 3 paramedics in training.
Okay, so we will have a total of 5 once they're all
That's correct.
fully trained. And Golden Cross are currently providing us with 1 paramedic 24 hours a day.
Most days it's 2 paramedics.
Most days it's 2. Okay.
Yep.
Because that's taking the place of the AEMT, who is a
Correct.
lower level, so a paramedic would qualify as that AEMT as provided for in our contract with us.
Great. And then final thing is going to this sort of response time data. So I was a little surprised to see a discrepancy between our kind of 90th percentile time from our internal data and what's in the report. And the report didn't really make it clear that they were only analyzing certain kinds of calls. I believe AP Triton will attend our meeting on February 7th, and I might seek further clarification from them there. It doesn't say it super clearly, I don't think, on page 44 of the report. We maintain an internal log of all of these EMS calls. Like, I and other members of the select board, I think, keep a fairly close eye on that, and I've been pretty feeling pretty good about, what I've seen there. And then that is kind of represented here in these monthly reports, mostly in this kind of summary data, but we see the, more granular data as well. I think I would, if you happen to talk with Rich from AP Trident, let them know that I'd like them to speak to why there's a bit of a discrepancy here, and be ready to get into the detail on it.
We had the same question, and
Yeah,
so I talked
I
with
expect
them.
you would.
I talked with them today, and that's when I learned that their 90th percentiles for emergent calls only.
Yeah.
And, yeah, we certainly be happy to talk to you about whatever questions you have on
Great.
February 7th. So.
And, as far as the public are concerned, this 90th percentile, it's not language that most people use daily, but it means that 90% of the time we're getting to the scene in 8 minutes, 46 seconds or less, right? So it could be 1 minute, or it could be 8 minutes, 45 seconds, and then 10% of the time it takes us a little bit longer. And the maximum response time is, I guess that's a historical maximum, right? So 30 minutes once, maybe, but
Yep.
I would imagine members of the public might be curious to know, well, okay, if 90% of the time you get in there on this, what's the extreme in the last month? But I appreciate the report, and like everyone else, I've been digesting the AP Trident study and look forward to them having come into the meeting on the 7th, and we can ask them some more questions.
Thank you, Daniel. Other board members? Liz?
Thank you. Good evening. I just wanted to point out that what this report speaks to me about is the number of avenues that your department and your ambulance service has oversight. There's our oversight, there's the Triton report, and then there's Dr. Storn and Dr. Swosey. And Dr. Storn's contribution to me is the most important. It's constant, and it's focused on the quality of care. And when he's come here to speak to us, I just think it's been very important to hear his overall view of your work as being very good, and that he provides constant renewal and feedback to you. I just think that's so important. So thank you.
Other board members? Jess?
Hey, I was just curious about this chart on the second page. I was wondering, there's a section where you give, how long it takes for calls to clear between this time range or this time range. Does that include EMS and fire calls, or is it just EMS calls?
This is just EMS call.
All right. So I was curious, what sort of calls might take over an hour or 2 hours to address?
Oh, I know.
What those could be is occasionally the police department has a situation where they're standing off with a subject, and they'll punch a card for us to go and stand by at that scene. And that scene could take up to an hour or 2 hours. So that's what makes these numbers look like why we were on that scene for an hour or two. Some of the half-hour ones are, as we've spoken before, staff gets there and the person just needed help getting up and then needed some help getting things taken care of in their house, and our people are willing to stay there and help them, either one make them a sandwich or one put their laundry in the dryer or something. It just goes a long ways, and it helps that person with a quality of life, and we feel it's important that we do that. And so that's why sometimes you'll see a longer time.
Thank you.
I'll just say Thank you both very much for coming to yet another monthly report. And I wanted just to speak to my appreciation to the modification of the presented data to include the 80th and 90th percentile based on the information that we learned in the AP Triton report, that this is a more accurate way of presenting the data to the select board, to the public. I think it just speaks to a theme that I've seen from the fire department and from you both as we've moved through and been in this transition period, that we're always trying to work to present the data to the public and be as transparent as possible. And I really appreciate the continued work, and as we learn more from AP Triton, as we learn more from the community, that we continue to try to best represent the data so that people can understand it and know what's going on. And so my one question to that would be, is it possible for us to go back and turn the historic data that we were presenting in the other way to this way?
So the problem lies with, I think I noted the date, December
21st? Yes.
So we weren't accounting for the seconds. And we would have to go back through 1,500 or approximately 1,500 calls and go into the reports, pull that data, and then export it out into the Excel document. So that's why I'm not saying that we can't. We'll do what we're asked, but it's not an easy task.
Okay, that's kind of, I wanted to know if it was easy or if it was something I was going to be asking quite a bit. Okay, I'll leave that to the board. I think that moving forward with this better reporting data style based on our AP Triton lets us, keep track in this better way and understand what the trends are. But I think let's just keep doing it this way moving forward. And thank you for that. Other board members? No, look to the public. Yep.
I have one wasn't planning on asking, but I think if I can articulate it correctly, I think it makes sense to ask. We have a statement by Dr. Storn here, and what I generally understand is that even if complaints come in a very public way, because these days complaints can come in extremely public ways, we're not going to really discuss any details, right? Because it's not only what he says here and that there's protocols and they're proper, but it's also HIPAA rules and such. I'm wondering, since Bob is here, would that also apply to somebody who is voluntarily trying to give a compliment? Because I've actually come across a couple folks who have sent me compliments about service, and they wanted to go public with them, and I sort of said, well, I think HIPAA would apply, but I can't say that you can't go public with your compliment. But I'm just curious how that really would suss out in a public forum. Is that also something that legally we should stay away from?
I think yes, but we can look into that. Certainly, folks have a way of, or have the ability to waive their privacy rights, but you got to be careful if you can't waive it for somebody else. So,
but then if it comes into a public forum, then we're talking about it, and that seems like it might be crossing a line. So.
Yeah, so we tend to stay on the cautious side of that.
Okay,
just keeps us out of lawsuits.
I got to keep him busy. He's here with us.
Yeah, it's true. All right. Any questions from the public? I don't see any hands. Seeing none, there aren't any other questions from the board. I don't think this requires a motion, correct? No. Okay. With that, Chief Howard, AC Kier, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, so we're going to move on to, yes?
I'm sorry for the late notice, but I just noticed it now, and it may have been up for a little bit. There's a hand up from Mr. Ozer.
Yeah, Bob, if it was our mistake, I don't want to keep you from asking a question, so you want to give us a brief one, and I'll pull up, Chief Howard and AC Kier have already stepped down, but we can pull them up if the question relates to something that they can answer.
Well, if you can hear me, I can direct this to you as the chair again.
Yep.
This is Bob Ozer from District 3. So and Daniel already touched on the numbers a bit here, but the AP Triton report says that requiring a substantially higher use of overtime backfill to meet staffing levels may result in employee burnout. And our last report in November indicated that fire department overtime was at 194% of budget. It's now at 216% of budget. So the Triton report doesn't give us a tipping point of when we should be concerned that we're getting to that point of burnout. So I guess the question here is, should we start to be concerned?
Yeah, thank you very much, Bob, for the question. Chief Howard, if you don't, sorry to pull you back to the mic there. Does the question sufficiently make sense for you to answer? Or
Currently, the overtime that we've inquired in the first 6 months here is due to staffing, and it's very minimal out effect from us doing EMS. We've had 7 people due to retirements, changing careers, 3 other guys who went to different fire departments to work. So we have to fill those positions until we hire staff and get that staff trained to a position where we can count them at the shift level. So that's why the overtime has been high. One of those people that took a career change was a captain, and we had to move Superintendent Joe Newton, who's typically a 40-hour-a-week employee, to the floor for his experience to lead a shift for 3 months.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that cost us, every time Joe worked, 16 hours of overtime because he was a 40-hour employee. So every 24-hour shift he worked, he was getting 16 hours of overtime. Figure that out over a 3-month period, that adds up quickly. So he's no longer doing that. He's back to his 40-hour position. We're still inquiring our overtime that we typically do, but it's certainly, you'll see a decrease in it.
And the other element that Mr. Ozer spoke to was just a concern that AP Triton raised, which was that you could experience burnout from firefighters if you have too much overtime. So I think part of his question was, are we at a point where we should be really concerned about that yet or not? Do you feel like you can speak to that at all, or?
We're working on that.
Yeah.
Typically with myself, Patrick, and John, we're working on that particular certain concern, and we're going to address it soon.
Okay. All right. So we can look to additional information on that as we get further updates from you.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chief.
I'd say it's a reasonable concern.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I appreciate the question. Okay. So thank you again, both. And we're going to move on to agenda item 8C, which is the Townwide Reappraisal Authorize article for RTM warning. And I'm going to hand this over to John first.
Yes, thank you. And Town Assessor Jennifer Burnell will be joining us on the screen. She couldn't be here with us in person tonight, but she will be requesting that the board approve an article on the warning for a representative town meeting for them to approve a townwide reappraisal, and she'll be happy to explain that request and the implications of it.
Jennifer, welcome, and great background.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for postponing my presentation from last week to this week. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I am here to ask the board to approve an article on the warning for representative town meeting to ask RTM members to approve a townwide reappraisal, which will commence 2024 and be completed in 2027. The reason I'm asking is because of the language in our charter, which states, and it's on page 12 of our charter, taxable property within the town may be reappraised from time to time as may be deemed expedient by the representative town meeting pursuant to a duly warned article. Had the state mandated us to do a reappraisal, we would not be, it wouldn't be necessary for us to go to representative town meeting, but our numbers were just above an order. So the state will not be mandating us to do a reappraisal, but the assessors are recommending and have been recommending that we do a townwide reappraisal. We will be convincing RTM of, but I'll state a few facts that the state is ordering 165 towns this year and to do reappraisals. And we have already been approved. We've put out an RFP, and we have chosen a contractor who we're very pleased with who we chose, and we're getting ready to sign a contract with them. So for those reasons, I would like the board to approve this warning for representative town meeting.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for the presentation. So board, just to a little bit more framing here, basically, yeah, we're not making a decision on this tonight other than to say, trying to be responsible with the availability of experts in this field to move forward to allow Jennifer to execute the contract after RTM approves it. And so putting this as an article for RTM to consider is really what we're being asked to do. So with that, do you have any questions or comments for Jennifer or Bob? Yes, Daniel?
Liz was first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just looking in this direction. Liz.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to commend Jennifer because, she has been starting this request last year.
Yeah.
And I think it's prudent and responsible. And I know that there was an article in the newspaper, I think it was VT Digger, talking about the scarcity of firms who could do this work. And so kudos to you, Jennifer, for lining up someone who can do this work that we really need to do. So thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo that. I had a conversation with Jennifer in May of last year that spoke to the issue that BT Digger reported on this week. And so Brattleboro isn't in the position that maybe some other municipalities are in because of our planning departments, or not planning department, our assessor's office for being knowledgeable and knowing to work on this sooner so that we're able to address this really important issue for the town to make sure that our property values are appropriately assessed. Daniel?
Thanks. I just want to kind of pull back the curtain on why this is in the discussion item, because I got a feeling that we're going to just approve this request for an article quite soon.
Oh, yeah.
But in theory, the select board could have said to Jennifer, whilst we respect your professional expertise, we're not going to do it as a policy decision. We're going to say, no, the state needs to make us do it. Whereas some of the other things that were on the consent agenda that have already been approved are very routine. And then the only one that isn't, that we did pull, is, I know we're getting it. Yeah. I just want to finish the point. All right. That's really a ratification of emergency use of funds, whereas this truly is a policy decision and it's informed by experts. But the board could have said no. But I don't think we will.
It still could.
I don't think we will.
Other board members? Tim?
I wouldn't say no either. I support the decision. But I am curious, in the worst case scenario, maybe in your opinion, Jennifer, that RTM does say no to that. Could I ask you if my assumption is correct? And my assumption is that a town like Brattleboro, with the large number comparatively to the other 256 or whatever it is municipalities, is in a better position going forward with bids like that anyway, because it would be more attractive to companies that do this?
So Brattleboro is attractive. But and anyone would want to, to work in Brattleboro. But we received two bids this time around, and we put out our RFP in September of 2022. So that's telling right there. And I'm not sure if I'm not sure if there were reasons. We emailed the RFP directly to all of the approved state approved appraisal companies. This particular contractor that has is very excited to work for Brattleboro has indicated that if RTM says no, he cannot say whether or not he can commit to a 2028 completion, nor will he be able to feel comfortable about an amount. It's too far out. He's already made the proposal with his amount for looking ahead to 2027.
Okay.
So
Well, that's good enough for me.
It's very risky for us with all of the other towns that are going through reappraisal. We have a contractor. I'm going to be pushing that point at RTM.
Yeah, thank you, Tim, and thank you, Jennifer. I think that speaks to just the last point I had, which was we should ensure to instill how important this is to RTM members, both at the informational session and at the actual meeting, so people understand what the repercussions would be if they were to vote against this article. Any other select board member? No. Yeah, I'm just gonna check. No one on Zoom. Come on up.
Thank you, Dick DeGray. Jennifer, could you explain to everybody the importance of the CLA and how it affects our tax rate, and the importance of getting the appraisal done, which I believe it should have been done a few years ago? Because when that CLA goes down, it has a much more significant impact on our yearly taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. And Jennifer, if you feel comfortable, please, I'm also happy to, excited to hear your answer.
Sure. So the CLA is used when the governor sets the education tax rate. Each town is equalized through a CLA. A CLA is created by a sales study that is done. Every town goes through a process of having their 3 years of sales reviewed by staff from Property Valuation Review. And Brattleboro's current CLA is at 86.65%. That is used in the formula to take the set base rate that the governor sets for the education tax rate, both for the residential and non-residential. There are two different tax rates. And the CLA is used to equalize. Now, as we move farther away from 100%, we're showing that our sales to assessment ratio is falling too far away from at 100% where we want to be. there's something else called the COD, which is coefficient of dispersion, and that shows that shows that that's actually not a bad number right now. We're pretty good with that number. But back to the CLA, that's used in our calculations for the tax rate. I hope that explained it a little bit. And if anybody wants to.
No, I think that's, Bob.
Well, just one additional thing to what Jennifer has said. The state mandates a reappraisal if you fall below 85%. So we're at 86 right now, which is really indicating that your listed value to your sales value is getting more out of whack. Now, it's a rolling 3-year average that or study that the state looks at. And what I don't think Jennifer stated out loud, but is in her report, is that the assessor's department tracks that, and the assessor's department projection came out right where the state did for this year.
Yeah.
If you look at the projection for next year, the town is likely, very likely, to be mandated to do the reassessment. So the reason for asking for this year, and the charter says when deemed expedient by representative town meeting, is to put it on for representative town meeting to get ahead of that curve while there are appraisal companies that are available to do it.
Thank you, Bob. Daniel?
This is like going over old ground, I think, but, we're RTM to say, no, we're not going to authorize that. And then next year, the state mandates us, we would still need to find a company to conduct the reappraisal. And what Jennifer was saying earlier is that the company that bid and was selected is unable to commit to being available the following year, right? Because it would kind of push everything out another year. We're currently looking at 2027.
Yeah.
Currently.
Correct, yeah. And so, that's just something for RTM to consider. And we'll let RTM consider it.
Yeah, and I guess the other half of that is that the common level of appraisal, the CLA, when it gets below 85, the state says that's so unhealthy, we're mandating you to do it. And Brattleboro is at 86. Right. So we are, it's not like, it's so close.
Seems like it's expedient.
Yes.
And just to add to that, the state has been sort of nudging me in this direction, and they recommend that you be proactive. They recommend all towns be proactive. Don't wait for if you think you're ready and you think you can go, you can afford it, you have enough funds in the reappraisal fund, go ahead and do your townwide reappraisal. You do not have to wait for us to mandate it. So, and this is from the state telling us, and they've been telling me, as Dick DeGray mentioned, for about 3 years, I've had a conversation. We've been talking about it within our office, and it's the right time to do it.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah.
And I just want to, because a natural thing for anybody watching this, and probably part of the reason for reticence generally for doing this, is that people believe that their taxes will go up precipitously because of the reappraisal, when I don't fully understand why, but that's not actually the case because it's more about how much your own property value rises in relation to the rest of the town. Is that accurate? Mm-hmm. Mostly?
Generally.
Okay, I'll take that. But the other point I do want to make is that I've just heard a couple different reports, and they seem to be accurate, that the projections for the education tax rates, the next one coming down the pike, could be at about an 8% rise. So it's something for municipalities to keep in mind when they are setting their municipal tax rates.
Thank you, Tim. Anyone from the public? Seeing none.
One more thing.
Oh, yes, Liz?
I just want to mention that some people think that from a political perspective, boards are reticent to do this because the public perception is so negative. But I applaud Jennifer and the Select Board and ultimately, hopefully, the RTM for acting on this in a positive way because it's the prudent thing to do. And we just need everybody to understand how important this is for Brattleboro as a whole and compared to other towns.
Absolutely. Thanks, Liz. Okay, with that, I'd look for a motion, Board. I'm not sure. I think it was Jess this time.
All right. I move that we approve an article on the warning for representative town meeting asking RTM members to approve a townwide reappraisal to commence in 2024 and complete in 2027 for the 2027 to 2028 tax year.
Jess has made a motion to approve an article on the warning for representative town meeting asking RTM members to approve a townwide reappraisal to commence in 2024 and complete in 2027 for the 2027-2028 tax year. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's going to carry 5-0. Jennifer, Bob, thank you both very much. Really appreciate it and glad that you were able to join us tonight, Jennifer.
Thank you.
All right. So we're gonna keep moving and probably plan to break around 8:15 and we'll move into agenda item 8D, which is public bathrooms discussion. So I'm gonna pass this over to John first, I believe.
Yes, and so I understand that the board had some conversations about the possible need for public bathrooms in the downtown area a few months ago, and staff has done some work on that, and there's information in your packet. And Patrick Moreland will step you through that and be available to answer any questions about the proposed items.
Excellent.
Yep.
Patrick, do you want to walk through it all or just take questions from the board who have
Either which
diligently
way. If
reviewed?
you want to go straight to questions, that's fine. Otherwise, I could give you a little history that's more or less reflected in the memo.
I'm getting some nods to give a little bit of history. So
All right.
a little history, please.
Not everybody.
I'll try and keep it brief. So a couple of months
that
ago,
in?
just like Town Manager Potter indicated, the board had asked about the possibility of public restrooms. So a small group of staff began to take a look at the issue, and that group included myself, Dan Tyler, Carol Lalott from Recreation and Parks, and Sue Fillion from the Planning Department. And we examined the whole of the downtown for what we thought would be good opportunities to situate or construct public restrooms. We did not look at private property, so we didn't explore options that would require the acquisition of new property. We only looked at publicly owned property. We did look at a variety of places that we sort of walked away from. Examples would be at the bulb outs on Main Street, right? So we started looking at, is it possible to put something on the sidewalk? We found it was a little tight and congested already, and so so we moved on in terms of our exploration. Not unsurprisingly, for those reasons, we came to the three same basic locations that had been places where we had previously put portable toilets or porta potties in the past couple of years during the pandemic. The porta potties were situated at the Preston lot, in the Highgrove lot, and on the Common. And the recommendations coming from this group of staff are largely consistent with that, although not exactly so. We think that it is ripe for near-term action for the board to consider bathrooms on the Common and in the Highgrove lot. We think in the longer term, once we've developed a clearer plan for the parking fund and for the transportation center, there may be an opportunity for additional restrooms there that we think could be recalibrated to better serve the needs of the public. But the recommendation that's before you includes 2 locations in the near term. One's at the Brattleboro Common. Here, we think it would be appropriate to use a precast concrete restroom. There's a picture of one included in the backup materials. That picture it shows a single unit. What we would be proposing would be a double unit, meaning that there would be 2 individual restrooms. They would be connected in a singular block, but it'd be a 2-room facility. The nice thing about these precast concrete products is that they can be installed and ready to go, like lickety-split.
Oh.
What would be the town's obligation would be to prepare the foundation, to bring water to the location, and to bring sewer to the location and provide for electric power at that location. We've worked with the Department of Public Works, who we think could do the site prep, and has provided an estimate of $50,000 per location to install the recommended devices. So at the Commons, that would be a precast model. We believe that would be really well suited for that environment for a couple of reasons. There are a lot of events that take place at the Common, whether they're weddings or all sorts of events that occur through the season. But the Common generally isn't in use in the winter. It's not plowed, for example. So in this location, we would be contemplating a seasonal restroom that would be open during the months that the facility is generally active. That would be the warmer months of the year. We also think that this particular location provides us with a real opportunity to partner with Rich Earth Institute, if we were so inclined, and there could be an adaptation to the precast concrete restroom that would provide for waterless toilets that would allow for urine reclamation. Rich Earth Institute, if you're not familiar, is a world leader in researching this technology, and a partnership with them would be really kind of interesting and be a demonstration of our trying to promote our goals in sustainability. So that's one option at the Common. At the High Grove lot, we see a different model might be more appropriate. And in this instance, we're thinking about something like the Portland Loo. This would be a facility we're proposing would be open 365 days a year. This facility is not enclosed. It is intended to be outside, even in weather such as ours. And so they are prepared and ready to operate within a cold environment. There are some examples that have been included in the packet that show sort of the thinking that's gone into, okay, we're going to need to bring water and we're going to need to bring sewer to these locations. In the High Grove lot, we're contemplating this in the center of the lot. We're thinking this would be an ideal option, an opportunity to provide some landscaping so that that sort of center area not only provides a location for a parking ticket kiosk, but also provides a restroom facility and the opportunity maybe for some flowers and other, landscaping to make it look nice. There is a estimate which has been included in the memo, and that is for a total of $425,025. This would be for approximately $175,000 at the Common, plus a $50,000 install, and $150,000 at High Grove, again with a $50,000 install, for the total of $425,025. I'll stop there and
Excellent.
take your questions.
Patrick, John, thank you both very much. And thank you to town staff that were involved in preparing this backup material. I know the board sort of made a big ask on this, and coming back with this thorough report is much appreciated. So board members, questions, comments for Patrick or John and or Public Works? I thought Liz first.
I have a question before I give my comment, and that is, I don't see an illustration of the Portland Loo.
Is that a question?
There's one on the top of the quote. They do look like that.
There
Yeah.
is, yes.
There was a little sketch.
Yeah.
There was also a report that the planning department put together not that long ago that had some pictures of Portland Loos.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly circulate that again, but it is largely looking like this. It is
It's quite nice, actually. I think.
Everyone's opinion?
For those following along at home, it's at the top of the last page of the quote. Or I guess it's the only page of the quote for the Portland Loo.
It looks to me very modern. It's, it's open to the outside elements, but enclosed. It provides one with privacy, but at the same time, it doesn't provide a enclosed heated space.
Yeah. I think my one question, Patrick, was you said that the Portland Loo proposed public restroom in the High Grove lot would be open 365. Does that mean that the proposed concrete restroom on the Common would not be open 365? I didn't see that necessarily in the backup material, so.
I would have to look to make sure
It
it's
is
in
there.
my
I missed
memo.
it.
It is.
I missed
I
it.
mentioned it just a moment ago.
It's in there.
The plan would be, and, it's just a recommendation to the board. The board can choose, how we proceed. Our thinking was because the Brattleboro Common is open basically seasonally, and it is not plowed, that we would maintain the bathroom without, for example, a heating source. We wouldn't plan for it to be open through the winter. We would close it down for that season.
Oh, I see. I apologize. Yes. Okay.
That would save on future heating costs. It would, it would be open during the months that the Common typically schedules events.
Yeah, and is most utilized. Daniel?
Are you finished, Liz?
Or did you want to now speak to what you?
Well, I could just, my first impression is, let's pick one. And let's save the money for ultimately a restroom at potentially a police substation in the transportation center.
A lot of ifs there.
Yeah. Whew.
Great.
Daniel?
I am appreciative of the work that went into this, and I'm appreciative of the work from planning that sort of was the pre-work for this,
Yes.
where we heard more about the Portland Loo. And I recall at the time, I think the planning tech, Steve Hayes, had done some research on a few different kinds of bathrooms, and the Portland Loo seemed like the most expensive at the time, and now it looks like the precast concrete is actually coming out more expensive than the Portland Loo, and I would personally prefer that any bathroom that we choose to build, right? We've never built public restrooms before in this town, correct? We didn't have them and then demolished them?
Not that I recall.
Okay, so given that people need to pee year-round, I think that the bathrooms should be open year-round, and the Portland Loo is actually designed to be functional, every day of the year. And so I would say, we could actually save a little bit of money on the Common by installing a one-person Portland Loo unit rather than the precast unit, and expecting to have it in operation year-round. If that changes the bottom line substantially because of maintenance costs, please let me know. But I would like, if we're going to invest in public restrooms, that we choose to invest in year-round public restrooms rather than this kind of seasonal approach. Because, it's January whatever today, and there ain't no snow on the Common, but that bathroom would have been closed for however long by this point, maybe. And I guess so that's like an overview. I'm in favor of this. I have curiosity around how will we pay for it? Which is a reasonable question, and I don't think that's quite answered, and it's hard for me to picture it in the FY24 budget. So I would love for the board to proceed with this, and I submit my recommendation vis-a-vis 365 toilets.
I have one follow-up question, and now I'm concerned that I missed something else in the backup material. But is there anything about the common location that like necessitates a different type of restroom to the Portland Loo?
So, our thinking at the time was that, we were also concerned a little bit about the attractive nuisance that a enclosure can provide. We've talked previously when we originally started talking about bathrooms about some of the drug activity, illegal activity, prostitution, and other activities that can occur in these types of environments. We felt, given how prominent the common is, that was likely to be minimized, but it would also be further minimized by being a seasonal installation. You're not likely to have somebody occupy the bathroom at the common if it were to be operated year-round and to be heated, for example. It would provide a real opportunity for somebody to come along and say, I live here now. Not sure we want to provide for that. So a Portland Loo might be an appropriate solution for that, to have the bath be able to provide the facilities without providing the attractive nuisance. Our thinking and the board's thinking is what really matters here, but our thinking was, let's put that year-round facility as centrally located within the downtown as possible, and the High Grove lot seemed like a good location for that. So that was our recommendation, but our reasoning is not the board's reasoning.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Other board members, comments?
Can I just add on to that
Yeah.
with a question? Was also a question about site work being with plumbing, et cetera, also a concern at the common?
It's the same basic estimate for either location.
I know,
50
I just thought that if you, it's possibly, I thought the savings was also going to come if it was shut down for the winter. It wouldn't be as complicated on the site work, or I'm mistaken on that.
You wouldn't need to, for example, put a propane tank there to heat the place. It would be, so for example, there's a water drinking fountain at the park in the common, but it's shut down, to prevent from freezing over. So this would be sort of managed in the same way.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Is the other benefit to doing it this way that we have 2 stalls, and if the equivalent Portland Loo, we would only have 1?
That's correct. So if you look at the United Concrete estimate, if you're doing a single room precast, it's about $132,000. If you're doing a 2-room precast, it's about $175,000. So I think they're more or less equivalent on a toilet by toilet basis.
Quote
More or
of the
less.
night. Yeah.
Me?
I'm not actually sure.
Fine, I'll go.
Yes.
Is it better to have a 2-person bathroom open 6 months of the year, or a 1-person bathroom that's open 12 months? I would say 1 person, 12 months, right?
Bird in the hand.
Yes, I'm not quite sure how that applies in this case. So that's, I really think that if we're gonna, this is a substantial investment. But it is a substantial investment in something that every person in this town and every visitor to this town actually needs. I'm sure everyone in this room today went to the bathroom at least once, right? But these public bathrooms are mostly used as bathrooms. They will occasionally be used for other things, but mostly they're used as bathrooms. And I think it would be interesting for us to talk to the city of Burlington. They have a couple of these Portland Loos in the City Hall Park. I forget what it's called. Maybe it's literally called that.
City Hall.
And Burlington has some of the same kind of social issues that we have. they would give us an honest response to their experience of maintaining those bathrooms, I'm sure. Maybe we already have.
Yeah, Sue Fillion's been in touch with them, and they seem quite pleased with them.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, I guess I have actually used it.
Yeah. Was it nice?
Yeah, it's very, well, I think my not to get like too graphic, but like it's very airy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like air moving through,
Right.
which is actually very pleasant.
The floor, it doesn't go all the way to the bottom, right?
And there's a sort of, at least the one in Burlington, my memory serves as like kind of like, you can't like see through it necessarily, but light comes in.
Yeah.
It's like not fully solid.
Yeah.
Liz, yes.
Maybe Arthur Davis could speak to whether I just didn't remember what Patrick said about Rich Earth. Can they adapt to the Portland Loo, or are they the concrete?
I'm sorry. Oh, hey. How are you?
Arthur, you want to just identify yourself for the record? And
Sure. Arthur Davis. I'm with the Rich Earth Institute. First, I wanted to say a big thank you to Patrick. I kind of got involved in this conversation a couple weeks ago, put in touch with Patrick through other folks at the town. So, but thanks to Patrick for having a great conversation and working this into the memo here. We don't have a lot of experience, Elizabeth, to your question, but I think that it would be tougher to do so, especially because of the issue of water freezing.
Yeah.
So it would be a much easier. Also, because of the details of the way that installation would go, it would really only be possible on the common, not really at the High Grove lot. And I think it would be a much more it would be a lot more complicated to do so with the Portland Blue, based on my understanding, which isn't complete. But I would also say, just speaking more generally, Rich Earth is very excited about the prospect of doing a collaboration with the town, whether it's in this instance or in a future instance. We do currently have a big grant funding to help do these things, and we would be able to. Right now, we would be able to foot a lot of the bill, which is why, in this estimate, this collaboration doesn't really add any cost to the town for us to be involved. And I think for us, it would be a great opportunity, and I think for the town, it would be a great opportunity to show, participation in some work that's really cool work that's been being done in Brattleboro for over 10 years now. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Arthur, for being here. And I'm not going to quite open up to public until we're done with getting through select board comments. That was more of a direct interrogation. So, Tim, yep.
I really appreciate the conversation. I'm a little bit confused because when we talked about the bathrooms, I wasn't aware that this was going to come in what I would call an 11th hour budget discussion.
Okay.
You can respond to that.
I think just to respond, I don't necessarily think it's a budget discussion.
Okay.
I
fine.
think that this is more like something that we've asked the town to prepare.
Absolutely.
Put a lot of work into it.
No, that's why I said straight off that I really appreciate the work that
Yeah.
was done, or I should have said that.
It could be. It could be an 11th hour.
Understood.
But it doesn't necessarily have to.
As I sit here, I would have too many questions to
Yeah.
support this for the FY24 budget.
Okay.
And I don't know how deep I'll dive into those questions, but I really do think we should think about what the extra staffing would be needed. We had a lot of issues with the porta potties and ended up going with them, not going with them in various degrees. So some of those issues would still be continuing, I think, until we could figure that out. And it's not a great time to sort of add things we need to police the verb, right now with our staffing issues, in my opinion. And I'm curious if there's one location, and you should just educate me why it's such a terrible location, but was Plenty Park looked at all?
Some think of the park as small, and so, a bathroom at that location would be kind of tight.
Okay,
And-
so it's mostly
and-
space.
So I think it's possible, and if the board wanted to put a bathroom there instead of Highgrove, I mean, I think the estimate for the loo is gonna be the same.
Yeah.
And likely, the estimate for the installation, I don't know.
I don't know.
Dan, but
The,
my guess is it's probably about the same.
That's fine. There's a couple of advantages to that terrible idea, Dick. I could just sort of hear that. But I do want to
for an hour on this.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need to go there. I do really think that we should, also consider not only partnerships with a great organization like Rich Earth, but partnerships with businesses downtown and getting their input and how they might support or be partners in either development or where they think it would be best, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I just feel it's not quite ready for prime time. And even if it was scaled back to the one at this point.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, I think I kind of find myself wondering about the Highgrove lot as one of the sort of proposed options. The way I sort of think about it in my mind is, because it's happened, when I'm walking downtown and I run into someone asks me on the street where a public restroom was, and my answer right now is there isn't one. And if I were to be asked that and I was downtown, and if it was in the Highgrove lot, my explanation would be kind of like, okay, well, you walk down, you get on High Street, you go up past High Tie, past Hermit Thrush, and then you take a right, and you'll be in a parking lot, and up there is a public restroom. And well, maybe that does work. I don't know. I just feel like there must be. Yeah, it's a bit of a hike, and there must be another place that's more centrally located. And maybe the answer is the transportation center, but there are a lot of hurdles on that like don't quite, kind of achieve, or I don't know. There's a lot to that question.
So I have no idea whether or not this will be satisfactory. The reason the Highgrove was pretty high on the list, at least of staff, was that particularly Sue feels that when visitors to the town typically arrive, they typically find their way to Highgrove first, right? Some of the other lots you kind of need to know about, but Highgrove is kind of like right there. You get off 91, you're heading down, Western Avenue, Route 9, and then bam, there's the parking. And so this would be a courteous way to greet people who come to town. And then secondly, because it's somewhat centrally located. So, if you needed to use the bathroom and you were a block south or a block north, it's not that far.
Does the town own the land? I'm going to give this up, and then we'll go to public participation after it lists. But I just have one other question. Does the town own the land that's on the other side of the Whetstone from the co-op?
Whetstone Pathway?
The Whetstone Pathway, there's like some green space there that's like next to the Latches parking lot.
Yeah.
You talking about the Whetstone Pathway?
Yes, it's
Does
not
the town-
all pathway. There's some not pathway there, but that area, yeah.
I think the answer is going to be really specific depending upon where we're talking.
Where we're talking about, yeah. I don't know if I can get more specific.
Because the town owns the pathway.
It just the path itself and nothing around it. Because
It's surrounded by
to not get
other
bogged
private
down
property
to
owners.
not get bogged down on details though, like
Sure.
that feels like very centrally located in a way where if I'm answering that question and I'm standing in front of, I don't know, the Latches, or I'm standing next to Sam's, like so where it's just like, oh well, you can see it actually if you just kind of thing. But anyhow, Liz.
I've explored a couple of public restrooms in other places, Woodstock and Concord, Massachusetts. Both have really nice public restrooms that are associated with their Chamber of Commerce. And as a matter of fact, the Chamber of Commerce and the public restroom are in the same structure in Woodstock, and they have a very nice symbiotic relationship.
Been to that one.
Yeah.
And so I understand the thought of the High Grove being a natural entry point to the town. At the same time, also, the Chamber of Commerce has a little booth at the Common. So that might be nice. But the booth at the Chamber of Commerce is a really cute little wooden structure. And what we're proposing is to put a cinder block building adjacent to it. So there's a lot of things to discuss, and we're not going to decide tonight. But in terms of the aesthetics, I kind of like the idea of the Portland Loo and the High Grove lot as being like a utilitarian structure within a utilitarian structure with, you know, the parking ticket device and all those other things. It kind of lends itself to that. So whereas originally I was thinking they should be at the Common, I'm thinking maybe one at the High Grove lot would be more appropriate. And I'm just sharing my initial thoughts.
Okay.
My second thoughts.
Daniel, and then we'll probably take a break and then do public participation on the item as we're already past 8:15.
Great, thanks. I would be interested to hear from Sue, maybe not today, obviously, about locations that were considered that are town-owned land and that are within the downtown footprint. I think that High Grove, I understand Sue's rationale for High Grove, but I still think it's a little out of the way. And I think that one of the concerns about public restrooms and even building them at all is like people will use them for nefarious things. And the more these public restrooms are actually in the, public's sight, the less likely that is to happen. When we kind of took them away, and a parking lot, is a little tucked away. I think the Common is a whole other story because that's it's the edge of downtown. I would be really interested to hear about, space that's within the downtown footprint, like the Harmony lot, like certain parts of Main Street, for example, in front of the marketplace where there's a lot more sidewalk available, why those are not good locations. I don't need to hear about it right now, but I'd like to see some maps and distances and all that stuff.
So we could do the Harmony lot easy peasy. That would just require working with Public Works and putting together a plan. I think the same budget estimate would likely accommodate that location. And we could bring back some additional information about the sidewalk and why it's crowded.
Yeah, that would help me at least. But I would like us to come back to this at some point in the not so distant future.
That does get to my point about plenty, not necessarily plenty, but somewhere that's a little more active and visible.
Active is important.
Okay, board, let's take a 5-minute break right now. We'll come back, we'll hear from the public, and then sort of figure out action items on this agenda item. Thank you. All right, and we're back. It's 8:28. We're going to open it right up to public participation, unless any board member has something they want to start out with, but I saw some hands. Jess?
I just wanted to say I'm really, certainly, absolutely in favor of the Portland Loo idea. I know when Stephen came to present about the Portland Loo and the other options, this one had some safety mechanisms in place. And I know that if the bathrooms ever have the opportunity to be used by folks who might have an overdose or some other health issue, the fact that the design is built so that you can see if somebody collapses in the space, I think is really important. So I'm a big fan of the design of the Portland Loo. I also saw that you said there were going to be call buttons on the inside of either facility. So I think that's a great thing to note, and great thing that's important to include when we think about this for any emergencies that might happen in those facilities, just to keep an eye on safety.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jess. All right, turn it over to board. I have a hand here. Dick, and Greg, actually, you had your hand up first if you want to. Dick's talked. Well, all right, go ahead. Come on, Dick. Great.
On this topic, he's just made noises, I think it's true. So far.
Dick DeGray. Greg and I are merchants downtown, and I can tell you that putting a facility up in the High Grove lot is not something that any of the merchants downtown would support. When you think about cold weather, winter weather, and somebody comes into my store and says, "Do you have a public restroom?" Yeah, go out the back door, take a right, go between the buildings, up the hill, take a right. I mean, you can't get there from here. And in the summer, when you have some quite warm days and trying to send somebody up there. So I actually think that that facility should be jettisoned. I asked Kim to give me the revenue from, if she had the revenue from the High Grove lot versus the Harmony lot, and you can actually tell which parking lot generates the most revenue, and that's because most people try to get into that Harmony lot. Having said all that, Greg and I have are reaching out to a private owner of a couple of buildings downtown and want to have a conversation with him about possibly using his properties for a public bathroom, where it's not for a purchase, but I think we could maybe work out a rental agreement where you might think about that. And so, in one facility, there are bathrooms already, and the other facility, there would have to be bathrooms installed. So I don't think you're going to make a decision tonight, so I'm not going to ask you to hold off.
Yeah.
And Greg and I are going to try to have this conversation with him. The Harmony lot in the corner where the Brattleboro mural is would be an ideal spot to put this. Absolutely ideal. It's a home run. It's accessible for everybody downtown. There's no walking up any hills. So from that perspective, that would be one spot. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but Plenty Park, I almost thought you had to get the defibrillator out for me.
Well, we have.
We don't have it handy, I don't think.
Good thing we had those, the chief here. If you look at where the benches are in Plenty Park, where the
under
covering
underhand
is,
covering?
if we took out the benches, okay, and stuck it right in that space where the benches are, there's enough room height-wise, and I think lengthwise. I'm trying to remember what the dimensions were.
Yeah, clearance to the sidewalk. I'd be interested about that.
You've got enough, you've got the sidewalk. I mean, those benches sit under, and
Yeah.
you would sit it right underneath the bus stop facility, which was, I believe, donated by the woodworking shop up at the high school back about 20 years ago. And I think that would make an ideal spot. We could certainly hide the thing with flowers. I do have hanging flowers on that facility, but that's a potential to take a look at. I asked Mr. Potter to take a look at it tonight on his way home, and actually when you're walking around. But we would prefer the Harmony lot versus anywhere else. And again, we'll get back to you after we talk to this person. They may say, no, we don't want any part of this, but we think it would be ideal. And I mean, it would be a rental agreement. I can't see anybody giving us the space for free. So I hope you take that into consideration and really scratch the High Grove lot.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dick. Anyone else want to participate in public participation? Yeah, Arthur, come on up.
Hi, Arthur Davis from the Rich Earth Institute again. And just to put a couple other things out there, I know there's been some, I think, there's reasons, I think reasonable considerations about the kind of proposed precast thing. And so I guess just from my perspective at Rich Earth, whether or not you decide to, at some point in the future, go for that option, we would love, I guess I'm just, as an emissary, just saying, we would love to partner with the town in some way, and whether it's on this or something else. And I think it would be a great way that the town could kind of show that it's thinking outside the box a little bit in terms of both thinking about the public sanitation and accessible public sanitation, but also thinking a little bit about what's going downstream and what's happening after someone goes to the bathroom. So, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Heather. Kate? No one on Zoom?
Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. I just have two quick things. I'm on the Brooks Memorial Library Board, and I think before you get any ideas that these things aren't going to go the way of the transportation center bathrooms, you might want to bring Star in here and have her tell you what's going on in the library bathrooms. This is a public building that at any given time, dozens of patrons and staff are in, yet there are problems in those bathrooms. The only saving grace is that there are people around to call 911 during the medical emergency or can yell out, anybody here have Narcan? So I would just think really carefully about the plan. You can't just leave these things and not go back 12 hours later and look. You know what I mean? There has to be a real good plan. If the library bathrooms are having a problem, freestanding bathrooms somewhere, I just can't imagine it's going to be a good scene. So just think about that and talk to Star.
Yeah.
I would also just urge you, I hope that you can sort of remember what people are coming here and asking you for. The merchants from downtown have been coming for months and months and months asking for help with the transportation center and a quote for cameras downtown. Yet they have got nothing. No one has come here and asked about public bathrooms. It's a priority of the select board. And, town staff takes their cues from what the select board say the priorities are. So I would really just urge you, Boys and Girls Club aren't here today to say it, so I want to say it because they're here at every meeting, that I hope that goes right up to the priority is figuring out a quote on the cameras for transportation center in downtown. Because I think that they're owed that. And I know Daniel probably will jump on me about the bathroom thing, but I just want you to keep that in mind, that they have been waiting and waiting and waiting for months and months and meetings and meetings. So I hope the next proposal that town staff works on is the cameras. Thank you.
Do you want to speak to that, or do you want me to?
I mean, it's so, we're getting away from the.
Yeah, and I want to keep us on track and and I think that there's some pretty clear direction that we can give to town staff on that. I'll speak very quickly to hear you on cameras, and I think we've given pretty clear direction to town staff that we are looking for quotes on them. I would disagree with the statement that what didn't come up about restrooms in the transportation center, because one of the complaints that we heard during one of the meetings about the transportation center was human feces and urine all over the transportation center and the cleanliness. I don't disagree with you, Kate, that that these are different issues and that the town should be considering all of them. But another element to this is that all the way back a year and a half ago in the community safety discussion, one of the things that we discussed at length was providing for basic human needs in the town for people. And so, and the transportation center has also been something that we've been discussing for years. So these issues are related. They're not the same. And so I hear the need for us to continue to prioritize that as well. So I don't think that they're that just one or the other. I really think that we're trying to work on all of these issues, but I appreciate the criticism, and I look forward to hearing about cameras in the future when town staff are ready to bring it back to us. If there's any other public participation, Greg?
Thanks. Greg Warden. I'm District 3, I think now. Just want to thank you for, considering the public restrooms, because being a business downtown, we get hundreds of requests a week for you have a restroom? You know, and people coming off the street, not necessarily to come into the store for shopping, but really looking for a place to relieve themselves. And it is a big concern. Elizabeth, you had mentioned, Concord, Mass. And Woodstock both having public restrooms. We did have public restrooms at the River Garden for a number of years while the strolling was there. And it was a really hard issue. So as we do this, you still have to remember, as Kate mentioned, that there needs to be monitoring of the restrooms, no matter how safe you think they're going to be or how just nice it's going to be to have restrooms, period. This Portland Loo sounds like there's at least a way to see through it a little bit to know when there's a problem going on, but still there needs to be monitoring of the public restrooms, but they are needed. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg. Okay, so Liz, and I think what I'd like is for us to start wrapping up this discussion item.
I just wanted to bring to the board's attention the fact that last summer, Representative Kornheiser asked this question and asked two of our members to bring it to the board, and we did.
Thank you, Liz. So kind of where I'm at there's a couple things. One, I personally would like the town to consider Harmony Lot as an option. I'm kind of the opinion we should do one first and do it in Harmony Lot. But maybe we ask town staff to look at that first, but I'm getting some head nods on that. So, and for it to be a Portland Loo, because we understand from our friends in Burlington that a very publicly accessible Portland Loo has worked for them. So my next thought would be, can we have town staff talk to Burlington, not about just the Loo, but about what's their experience with drug use, overdoses, because that's happening in Burlington. How many happen in the Loos, and how often do they check them, things like that, so we can really start to consider Kate's point. And then finally, when it comes to funding, I agree with Tim, it's not quite fully baked for a consideration for FY24 budget. There are two town funds that I would consider and would want the board to consider. One would be ARPA. The second would be the Community Safety Fund. I understand that both of those funds need discussions on how we're going to allocate funds out of them. I believe that this is an item that can be considered for both. And then finally, I'd like to know if there's any funds outside of the municipal government that would be available for something like this, an initiative to provide public restrooms. And if there's something statewide, or I don't know, but if we could start to look at that so that the board can seriously start considering this as an action item sooner than later. Tim.
And if we're giving informal staff direction,
yes,
let's also not forget the nice offer and work that Dick and Greg were working on.
Oh, I had that on my thank you. And to couple that with if we hear back from a proposal for rental space downtown with either that there actually is restrooms in there or that they would be installed, what would that look like? And let's have an understanding of like that compared to the Loo. Anything, is that agreeable to Jess?
Never mind.
Okay.
I'll bring it up next time.
Okay, is that, do I have head nods on that we've got at least 3 people who are okay with that direction? Mm-hmm. Clear enough,
Thank you.
John?
Yeah,
or
and any sense of time frame on this, or?
As soon as humanly.
Come back before town meeting?
Who?
Or after town meeting?
This is a good working relationship moment. I am hesitant to give like a deadline because I know how busy you and town staff are. My request would be, as soon as it starts to feel a little long on the tooth and it's not coming before the board, that you just give us an update.
Okay. Yes.
Unless it can come before the board before it feels long on the tooth. Fair?
Okay.
That's clear as mud.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about by June?
Okay.
Yeah, if we could discuss it before we have the discussion about the transportation center, that would be very helpful.
You won't have me in the discussion.
Oh, well you can.
Well, you can
might
be
go
a
well
member
for
of the public.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that would depend, of course, on the voters of Brattleboro returning or not returning.
Well, they won't be returning Tim, that's for sure.
So I don't think there's any motion then on that. And any question on that one, John?
Nope.
Okay, so we're going to move on to agenda item 8. So for those following along at home, I've modified this to 8E, which is the FY24 general fund budget, all remaining items.
Lightning round.
Lightning round. So, board, it's my pleasure to get to walk us through this one. And what I'd like to do is take them one item at a time, beginning with how it's warned here. This is not the first time, nor the second time, perhaps not even the third time that this board has looked at some of these items. And so I think that we can keep the discussion to really pertinent questions on specific impacts to the FY24 budget or questions that maybe weren't addressed last time the item was brought up. But I'd like to keep us moving forward on this. So the first one is the communications coordinator. Sally, if you don't mind coming up for a moment, just in case board members do have questions on it. I may have you just sitting there for and not speaking, but I just want to make sure that if there are any questions. So the memorandum is in the back of the. So board, this is consideration for a new position. Sally, what is the fiscal impact that this position would have on the FY24 budget, including the benefits roundabout?
The salary currently is earning, I believe, $43,368 annually.
Yep.
It currently does not, for fiscal .24, it would include benefits. I don't have the full cost of that.
Here it is. 63,606.40. Is that?
No, that's other. Those are other
That's basic.
positions similar to this across the state.
Okay. It was. I thought I saw 60 somewhere.
Didn't we have some sort of percentage?
We generally land on an average.
An average.
Of 15.
Okay.
Per employee.
Yeah.
It's averaged over
Yeah.
how the employees
What kind
and
of
how many we have and how they access.
Yeah, what type of, if they take a single plan
Right.
or something.
Yeah.
It'll all
So you-
vary.
You can't really pin it to a
Can't-
person.
Yeah. Okay. Board members, questions, comments on this proposed position? Liz is just giving a thumbs up. Daniel?
Yeah, I enjoyed meeting Seth, our last meeting. Seth is the person that currently holds this position.
Correct.
You know, we are considering the position, not considering Seth as such, right?
Yes, and it was.
I mean, it would be nice that Seth stays with us and remains in that position, but like, you know, it's not a personal thing. It's really about the position. I guess I'm kind of curious as to the potential for growth in this position. I think that the work that Seth has been doing on the website coordination is like, you know, much needed and will eventually sort of like scale back, I guess, to an extent. Like, you know, it'll be more like within the organization of the town. right?
Doing department posts and such, yeah.
Yeah.
Keeping it maintained and
Yeah.
clean and universal, yeah.
And so that's important, and it'll be good to have somebody at the helm of that. Other like communications work that I think would be nice beyond social media. I actually think it would be really good to imagine that there is a world beyond social media, because that is not the only way to connect with people. And in some ways, it's like, it's too easy and makes you think you've done something. And in actual fact, mostly you haven't. You know, so getting somebody to like a Facebook post or whatever, you know, is a very shallow level of engagement. And I would love to see this position eventually become something that engages the community on a deeper level. You know, I mean, we're sort of part of that in a way, right? Like we are representatives of the people, and, you know, we can at times like go out into the community and do deeper kind of work that, hears what people are concerned about, and also most of us have full-time jobs and lives outside of this role, and it's hard to do. But I would love to see the town kind of taking steps eventually, I'm not saying like this year, eventually towards a deeper level of engagement in the community, maybe putting on forums and so forth that are not select board meetings. Most people, as you can see, choose not to come here. Maybe some watch on BCTV at home, but there's a large number of people out in Brattleboro who we need to hear from, and we need to find ways in which to do that. And I think that this position could eventually grow into something like that. And so really, I guess I'm kind of floating that for the future, but I don't want to be so limited as to think that, the website and social media and some editing is the be-all and end-all.
The position has grown even since he started back in July. But speaking like of BCTV, I know Seth has, I believe, become a member, and he's able to get our ads on there. We're on the guide. He checks in with them. So he's providing, he did a fire training video with the fire department, and that, and so he is already starting that type of work, and I think we're going to continue to see this position grow. There's talks of actually bringing in maybe some, making it a public information point person for within the fire department and the police department. We've been talking to the chief about that. And there's just so much more growth. I mean, he's also, this position, we've also internally added some duties to it, like helping with email responsibility for new and exiting employees, keeping us all in cybersecurity training, which is a platform that we purchased through VLCT to train your staff. And so, but speaking out externally as well, he does, he'll get emails. Right now, this person receives emails from different department heads. This event is occurring, and this event, and how not only just how to promote it, but he does attend them as well to then add that into either the external newsletter or the internal newsletter. So, we're seeing it grow and finding more ways on how we can keep developing it and to be more, like you're mentioning, part of the community as well. And I think he's already starting to receive more. People are know the positions in existence, and they're reaching out to him more too. And he's reaching out with partners like Efficiency Vermont. And I think there was others that I had listed in the memo that are, he's asked to attend like the Energy Committee meetings, and he's meeting with them. I think someone came and spoke about him recently at the last meeting about his presence there. So I believe that he's finding more engagement with them and developing that into the position.
Great, thank you.
I want to follow up on it. And do we feel, just keeping on that, we're looking at a position and not an individual for this, do we feel, but really appreciating those points, do we feel that if this were to need to be reopened up as like an application for a position, if we were to make it permanent, that those things that Seth has helped to sort of develop this position could be incorporated into like the job description?
Sure.
Yeah. That, like, whoever it is would be expected to attend meeting like these things or be part of BCTV or those kind of. Yeah, we could grow it. As we've learned how the position has grown throughout the year, if it gets approved through the budget, the job description can be, updated to meet those needs. Absolutely.
And then position was originally posted as temporary with a position, possibility to go permanent. The town manager would have, we would post it. The town manager does have the ability within our handbook and our policies to promote from within, to assign the position. They call it I'm blanking on it right now, but there's a provision that he could appoint the person or if it were to be open again to accept other applications. But the person in the position does have, the priority to move into that position.
Okay. And then, Liz, please.
Well, just tonight we learned, for example, that there's programs about housing and housing rehabilitation and so forth. And, the public needs to know that. And one of the things that I feel that makes town meetings such a lengthy proposition is that a lot of people in town and even town meeting representatives don't know a lot of town programs and what goes on. And the more we can learn and be educated about our own town and what we've all learned in our service here, could remedy the length of town meeting, because sometimes people ask for things that the town is already doing. And that takes an hour to resolve. So let's do this.
Well, that's more than a thumbs up.
Tim?
And again, I want to say that I was really impressed with Seth when we met him. He seems to be doing a great job. I love the work that he's doing. But I have a process problem with this position, and I've mentioned it before. This position was brought to the board, or actually, it wasn't really deliberated at all by the board at all. Presented to us as a temporary position, mainly to get the website up and running, which is sort of number one job, right? The whole time I've been here, adding a position to town staff has been the purview of the select board upon recommendations from town manager. The process doesn't feel right to me. What does feel right is that once we have the website in place, where we work with Seth or whoever becomes communications coordinator, the other questions kind of would fall into place, I think. I think it's just a little bit premature, and it would be nice to follow the process that we've established for many years, that this board does have the up and down vote on adding staff, because you add staff to town payroll, they don't tend to go away. I've never heard of it happening recently in my memory. And we've actually, if you've been on the board with me, we've had a lot of disagreements and a lot of robust discussion. And we had the same for your position, and thank goodness you're here with us, because it was such a great result. Just last year, we discussed quite a bit of the 2 positions that we added last year. So adding yet another position that I feel is premature, I would just much rather see an extension of the year come in July, if needed, and then we consider it for the next fiscal year. Again, I feel like it's certainly the person that fills the position is up to staff. That's not a level that the select board should ever be involved in. But creating a new position where there was no position before should be a formalized process that we should follow. So, my argument.
Thank you, Tim. Board members? Jess?
Thanks. I'm excited about having a communications coordinator. I'm excited about the content that Seth is creating, and the way it tells the story of the town and what we do differently than has been in the past. To Daniel's point, I think what he's describing is a very different job.
Yes.
There is coordinating communications, content writing, posting to the website, and then there's outreach. And thinking about those 2 jobs as the same job, or even doable by the same person, isn't always likely, because they come with 2 very different skill sets. One is, graphic design and attention to detail and writing skills, and the other is this outgoing personality who's great at engaging folks and good at project management and mobilizing and leadership. It's 2 different things. Mm-hmm. I think for me, the outcomes of outreach are very different than the outcomes of a communications coordinator. Communications coordinator helps the town tell the story of who we are and what's going on. And I think that we've not done our job adequately, and there have been folks like the Chamber of Commerce and different volunteers and sometimes select board members that have tried to fill that vacuum. And I think that it's really important that we have somebody professional coming in and taking that on in a more systemized way, especially as we want to present to the world a more professional face.
So just to clarify that for myself, do you feel that this position is clear enough to address what you hope it achieves? Or do you think that it's getting mission creep and it's bigger than it should be?
I don't want it to get mission creep.
Okay. And you feel that currently the job description that is considered in the memo here is accomplishing what you're looking for, or is attempting to?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think that we also fall short on outreach and engagement, like Daniel's talking about, in public participation processes, public forums, public surveys. I think that we could do better there, and I think telling the story about the fact that they're happening is a part of that puzzle, but there's probably more to it. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, just jumping on that. My comments earlier, I'm not saying that the current person occupying this role should expand into this other work. I was reluctant to sort of really name it, but I imagine if this continues to be successful, that maybe we might want to add to that and, hire an additional person.
I'll make a team.
Perhaps. Imagine that like a team. And I was just consulting the charter because, Tim's point about the select board sort of having an up and down on new positions. I don't know if that's really supported by the charter or if it's just been our habit. In the charter, it says the select board has a power to establish other departments of government for the orderly and convenient administration of town affairs. So maybe if we're creating a new department, that's something. But in the town manager's duties, the town manager has the power to control and supervise and to be the appointing authority for all town departments. So if the town manager wants to hire somebody, it's the town manager's decision, right? And the budget will be impacted by these hires, and the budget comes before us, and then the budget ultimately goes to, I don't know why I'm telling you all this. We all know, these people know this. We know it. I guess there's some people watching on TV that might
I was
not
putting
know
it, Tim.
I just want to, I'm not disagreeing.
Okay.
But I do want to say that in this case, we do not have the ability to correct a decision by the town manager of just going ahead and sort of doing this. And
we could just.
I suppose we could say to the budget.
No. We could just say no to this budget and remove it.
Well, no, I'm saying this is the reasoning behind my, continuing with the process that's been established for as long as I've been on the board, is that it lets the board consider the position itself and the good and the weight and the taxpayer's burden, so rather than, this way of hiring a temporary, as it was described, for 1 year, with the intent to work on the website and other stuff. And this is not about a person. This is about a position and how we go about. So it's already been done by someone that we do not have any say over anymore. I'm saying let's go through the formalized process to establish the position formally once the website is in and we know how many hours it takes to run it, et cetera.
I think so to not get in a back and forth about this for a long time, I think that basically the select board's sort of decision or check on this that you are saying has been part of your time on the board is right now. Sure. It's looking at the FY24 budget, and you can remove this line item if you want to. And last year for FY23 budget, if you didn't want to approve the evidence technician, then we could have removed that from the line item in exactly the same way. If anything, we're a little bit more informed about this proposed position because we have a temporary person building towards what could be this position, and we have Sally speaking to how helpful and good it has been, and we have town recommending that it would be a very helpful position for the town to employ full time. So if anything, I feel like the board is working with more information than we did with, say, the evidence technician, which had very little discussion, and it was good. But it wasn't, we talked about it, but we moved forward with it. So I hear what you're saying, but I think I don't fully agree with your attack of the process here because we are the check on this now, and then RTM is also the check on approving the full budget.
Okay. Well, this is what you're witnessing, my checking.
Excellent. Great. I love it.
I'm going to zoom back to 1,000 feet. I'm going to make the arguments right now.
Fair. Yeah, absolutely. Other board members before I open it to the public? No? Yep.
Dick DeGray, I appreciate Tim's concern. I mean, I'm reading the job description that's in the handout, and in my position, if I was where you were sitting, this doesn't have the value of $61,000 here. I would tell you, and I was here for the presentation, and I was very impressed with the website's going to look like. But I think that this could be maintained at least for the first year by somebody who is part-time. And then after that, reevaluate and say, you know, I think we should turn this into a full-time position. There's a residual effect every time you add a staff member. And I think that's why boards really do a lot of deliberation before they add staff, because it's going to have an impact. And somebody made the statement, we don't get rid of staff. It just doesn't happen. In fact, I think the last time the town had cut positions was sometime in the early 90s, where I believe 10 positions were cut by the board. So when I look at this, I go, yeah, but the reality is I don't believe at this point it's a full-time position. And I would support that, even though I'm a little bit skeptical reading the description for what the job calls for. I don't see each department putting out press releases on a daily basis. And very rarely do they. I mean, the holiday season, and we do, but it's not something, and I agree with Daniel, that putting something on the Facebook page or going around town, taking a few pictures to put them on our new webpage, again, it's a $61,000 position. So I would ask you to reconsider what you're doing here and think about possibly doing that and then revisiting at the next budget cycle.
Okay, thank you very much, Dick.
Could I?
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to speak to that a little bit, if you could, Ian.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just thinking of the value, a lot of what I didn't add to the backup material that you were provided was a lot of testimonials from the department heads and just speaking to about, I mean, I use some of their language, it's embedded in the memo, but it was really speaking to the value that the organization has found with this position coming into play. You know, the previous website or any type of messaging to the town was done by, do you have spare time to the staff and someone on staff, you know, taking someone from their primary responsibility to ask them to do, you know, can you upload this? Can you take care of this? And it was all done individually in silos and not universal. But that was also even just not just website or social media. It's just, you know, assistance with presentations, you know, that have come to this board. I believe, you know, I'll testify that I just know that I've heard from so many department heads how they just know they can reach out to this person in this position. And if it's not, you know, just moving forward, how helpful it has been to them and being able to help with the messaging for the organization. So I find that there's a lot of value just in the fact that there's one point of contact and it's not taken away from other people's responsibilities in the day-to-day. Sometimes we just ask so much from people that may not be their strength, and this position provides an opportunity for us to move forward in that way.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sally. Yes.
So I'm just curious why this position, after the way you've described it, why is this position in the HR department and not in the town manager's office, serving all the departments and department heads? And
So on that lines, I know when it first came in, I jumped at the chance, honestly. Because internally, the communication came from the HR office. That was something that was instilled when this position came in, the point of contact to get the message out. So it just kind of fell in line with communications. I mean, and then it's even right now, we're finding how important it is in this department. Just because everything starts with us, you know, not everything, but the employees coming in, you know, it all begins here. And then just being able to add a different element of like what they can expect from the town with the communication as an employee. But just, again, like we work so well together, all the department heads, and it is part of the town managers, actually. The job description does place it in 2 departments with direct supervision from the HR director. And it just, probably not giving it justice, but it just kind of flows so well within the HR department, just because of all the departments that this department also, there's not one department I don't speak to or assist with the work that they're putting out to the messages or the public, and that position is helping and aid in that way.
Other board members? All right, well, I think, Daniel?
I just want to really make it clear for people watching at home. I've heard one board member say that they're not sure about this position, or maybe actually not in favor of it, but I haven't heard that from anyone else. I am in favor of this position.
Yeah, I was about to, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to formally,
Go ahead.
so do I have 3 thumbs up on?
I'd like a vote.
All right.
And I can put it in the negative if you'd like, but.
We can put it to a vote if you'd like.
Yeah, thank you.
Would,
And I'm, honestly, it's really more just a delay. Similar to what I said, we pushed the formalized adoption of this position to fiscal year '25. Not anything to do with performance or the value of the current job, because we're paying this money now for this good work that we're getting.
Yeah.
So that's really the question, is the formalizing the position, correct? Because we're not going to get involved in who is in that position.
No. John, did you have?
No, I was just going to ask if Tim's motion was to remove this from the.
Because there's not really a
proposed
motion for the
budget.
board to consider as it's part of the FY24. It would maybe, yeah, I see what you.
I'm just.
No, I mean, I can make a motion to.
You want
Yeah.
to,
That, I think that would be the way to do, that would be the.
Sure. It
Yeah.
sounded like Daniel wanted to make a motion, so I was letting.
I mean, mine was a little simpler,
You
so
want-
it was something along the lines of, oh, God, I hate doing it on the fly.
Me too.
Yeah.
I can maybe.
Yeah, go on, help me out.
It would be to maintain the line item in staff's proposed FY24 budget for the proposed position of communications coordinator.
Great.
let me just clarify. What Tim is proposing is just to keep it temporary for another year.
Yes. Oh,
It's no,
no movement.
well, I'm just saying, it doesn't change the budget at all. It's still in the budget. It's just a matter of wanting the position and its duties to be made permanent after the website is complete. Correct? Is that what you're thinking?
From a budget perspective, all I'm thinking is that we're saving on
It would be like
Full-time.
the full-time, so the.
for the benefits.
From the 40,
But yes, from a
43.
process, it doesn't
43
save
to
us
the 61.
actual money
Right.
of the current hourly. I guess that's because it's not salary, it's
No,
hourly.
it's hourly, right, at 37 and a half a week.
So it really doesn't change the budget, if I understand correctly. I'm not proposing we remove the money for Seth's position. I'm just proposing that we delay the salaried and benefited position for 1 year.
Right now, he doesn't get benefits?
No, it's a
No.
temporary position, they're not eligible for benefits.
Huh, that sounds
nice.
terrible.
yeah,
That's what a temporary position often is.
yeah.
I was not aware of that.
Daniel,
Yeah. Earlier it was spoken to that, like, add-in positions basically bad. And like, honestly, in this town, there aren't that many great employment opportunities, but working for the town of Brattleboro is one of them. Not because it's like a cushy job and you get nice benefits. It's like a great employer, you get meaningful work to do, and when we bring people into the town to work for the town, they tend to stick around and add value to the community. So growing the town as an organization is actually good for the community. And Seth's work here has been good for the town and thus good for the community. I'm a little upset to learn that this temporary position doesn't give Seth benefits. Every single person in this room and watching on TV knows that if you have to call for an ambulance or something terrible happens to you that you didn't expect, it can be very costly. And so I would like this to be a permanent position with benefits because we need to treat our staff properly. And I submit that as a motion.
No, actually, what's actually great is I looked at Bob because we're actually doing this the right way for once, where the motion was made and now we're having discussion on it. So
How about that?
any further discussion?
Can I just ask, what was the motion that was made?
I can repeat it for you. The motion was for the board to maintain the line item in the staff's proposed FY24 budget for the communications coordinator position.
To be permanent? It's a permanent position, right?
It's the staff salaries line item, but to maintain it, yeah, that'll work.
What I'm saying,
Maintaining as a permanent position.
I don't know why is my motion flawed?
No, I'm saying your motion isn't flawed.
Okay.
But there is no specific line item that says communications coordinator. It's embedded in staff salaries. in the
Maintain
HR
staff's
department.
recommendation.
Okay. Oh, no, it is flawed then. Okay, so the motion modified is for the select board to maintain the staff's proposed FY24 budget salary.
Do you want
Well, it's not a line item though.
May I?
Yes, please.
May I move, or may I change your motion?
Yes, please.
I'll change your motion. That we accept the staff's proposal for a full-time benefited communications coordinator position.
As reflected in the FY24 proposal.
Yeah.
There it is. Okay, any further discussion, board?
I have a question.
Okay, if you want to, yeah, but as I'm aware from the rules, I kind of can end public comment on it when I feel like it's necessary. But if you've got one more quick question, because
Yeah,
we've got
I
a lot more
get-
things to do tonight.
Sure, I get that, but I'm looking at, how did this get put in the budget before you adopted the position? Usually it's adopt the position and then add it to the line item. So I actually think this is asked backwards. And I mean, the reality is you put something in, staff put something in the budget without the approval of the board. And now the board is just rubber stamping it. I mean, you're gonna discuss custodians in a few minutes. That's not in the budget, to my knowledge. And this should have been treated the same way.
Thank you, Dick. Any further discussion?
The memo sort of describes the process of how the position came about.
Yeah.
And points out that it's not benefit.
Yeah, I guess I didn't catch that, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, do we need to repeat the motion, the now re-modified motion? Jess, you want to say it for us one more time? You got it?
Move to approve the staff's recommended proposal to create a position of communications coordinator, full-time benefited, as reflected in the
As
fiscal year
reflected.
24 budget?
Yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? You gonna say nay?
Nay.
There it is. Carries 4-1. All right. So we're going to move on to the Town Arts Fund. So thank you very much, Sally. Sorry. So this is basically been brought back before the board because there's a very helpful memo that was provided to the select board but didn't get a chance to get into the backup material. Jess, do you want to have an opportunity to speak to this first, just because you were able to kind of be the point on this? But in summary, the request is to raise the annual contribution from $15,000 to $20,000. One of the unique things about this select board is that the select board is that this is one of the only items on here that is actually asking to add to the budget. So like the communications coordinator was in the budget, so this would be adding an additional $5,000. Do you want to speak to it anymore, Jess, or have people reviewed the memorandum and feel comfortable with just moving to discussion?
I just want to highlight a couple of things.
Yeah, please.
So the Town Arts Fund is money that goes directly to Arts Council of Windham County. That's a nonprofit, completely volunteer run that works within our region, and they receive proposals. Each year, they get between 25 and 40 applications to sort through for the fund of $15,000. And projects are awarded anywhere from $1,000 to $2,800. And these projects employ artists. They make our town more vibrant. They bring artistic activity onto the streets. One of their key criteria for decision-making is it engaging the community in the arts? And so they look at, different populations getting engaged, different geographic parts of our community getting engaged. And they really make a pretty great effort to be inclusive and bring arts to everyone. So I think that, they're asking for a small bit of this increase to go towards their organizational work to make this grant process happen more smoothly. And then they're also asking the town to contribute just a couple more awards worth of funds so that they can keep doing the good work they're doing. And I think it's a small ask, and I think that it should be an easy yes after several years of success.
Great, thank you very much, Jess. And so board, discussion, questions? Tim?
Thank you for taking the initiative. I think it's completely justified and worthwhile, and I support it.
Great. Thumbs up from Liz, thumbs up from Daniel, thumbs up from Ian.
Yes, great.
Thumbs up from Tim. I think we move forward. Thank you very much, board. Okay, so.
Any public,
Oh.
or not, I mean, we're all on board.
Would you like to speak on it, Dick?
I'm reading here in the proposal, it's talking about paying $1,000 to $1,500 to a volunteer on a committee for administrative work. I think that sets a bad precedent for any committee, and I think that should be stricken. If you want to give them the money, they do great work. I support the arts program. I really don't support people who volunteer paying them a stipend. For me, that's a no. And that $1,500 could actually go to another project.
Thank you very much, Dick. Don't see any other hands on Zoom. Okay, so are we still thumbs up after the comment, or do we want to modify? Daniel?
Still thumbs up. I just want to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit on who's running this program. It's Arts Council of Windham County, but as far as I understand it, it's basically two people, both of whom who have full-time jobs and lives and families. And, if they need, we provide a small stipend available for dependent care expenses. We each receive a small stipend, got a little larger a few years ago, but it's still relatively small considering the amount of work. I don't mind there being some administrative, use of this fund. I think that what we've seen from this fund is that they really want to support the artists. So I suppose we could give them some guidance, like, please continuing to support the artists, but I wouldn't want to say you may not use, a certain percentage of this for administrative funds. A lot of grants say you may use up to 5% or something. Maybe there's modification there. I'm sure Elizabeth has something to say about it.
Yes, I see this as akin to the Human Service Program, where we give funding to various groups. Let's say Groundworks, for example. They can use that funding to help in all their services, but at the same time, they're paying staff. So I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. Any further discussion on that?
I see both sides of the argument, but it doesn't stop me from wanting to increase 5,000.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to the FY24 general fund budget, E3 custodian cost share. So board, I think I can sort of just summarize this with, first, a thank you to town staff for doing the deeper dive and understanding how these custodial staff positions are divided between the general fund and the parking fund. It seems to me what makes sense would be referring to that last line of the memorandum on this item, which is it means that the costs are being distributed fairly across the funds, which was one of the concerns that we had last meeting in discussing this item. And if any additional custodian is desired, specifically in discussing the transportation center, the proper place for that new cost to be borne is in the parking fund and not the general fund. So I think what would make the most sense is for us to shelve this discussion and have it in June or before June when we are looking at the parking fund. And actually, I would just do a little callback to, this is another reason why it would be helpful to have the discussion about the public restrooms, new backup material and another discussion for the board prior to June, because the custodial staff will probably be an element of that discussion as well. Any issue with that, board?
No.
Nope.
No.
Okay, so moving on
Public, or-
I'm just not trying to not have public participation on it. I'm just moving along.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
You did.
yep.
You did.
The public have spoken,
Thank you, Dick.
representing the entire public.
Great. So moving on to the COLA increased. So yeah, this we've gone over a couple times now. I'm gonna toss it to Tim first, as I think this is something that you wanted to discuss further. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak on it. But basically, it's a proposed 5% COLA increase for the rising in cost of living to attract and retain quality employees in a competitive environment and to position the town for the outcome of pending collective bargaining with towns for collective bargaining units. So, Tim,
Okay.
or unless you want me to open up to other people.
Formulate a preamble, but I'll do it on the fly. I feel that, let's see, certainly cost of living increases are important. Historically, I'm going to go back to my time on the board, that old tired phrase. We have generally been pretty automatically going waffling between 2 and 3% with a few different factors by my memory as we go back 6 years on the board. I certainly understand the justification coming from staff for the 5% increase and sympathize with it. What I would like to do is propose that we go with a 4% COLA increase, and that's not because of the, and just to fill everybody in, that is roughly equivalent, each 1% increase, we're told by staff, is roughly equivalent to $75,000. That's real money, but it's not really about the money to me. It's more about setting the precedent of having the municipality have swings in COLA increases. I think that the municipality can be, a steady, supportive, but not overly reactive body when it comes to COLAs. A while back, not in this document, but in a previous document, a comparison was made to Social Security increase. That increase this year, I think, was about 8%, you pointed out, maybe, or even higher, perhaps.
I thought it was 8.7, but I can double check. It's in the memo here.
It's fine. I did a really easy Google, though. And it turns out that COLA, Social Security COLA, swings wildly. And many years, it's 0.
8.7.
2012 to 2017, it was 2.0 or lower. It was fluctuating between 0 and 2%. 2009 and 2010, it was 0. And then it swings way up to
8.7.
8.7, yeah. So I don't really feel that in the position of taxpayers not necessarily getting COLA increases. I mean, certainly hope that they would. My family didn't get a COLA increase. I'm self-employed mainly. And my wife didn't get a COLA increase. Maybe she should have, something to bring up. But I don't think it's necessarily the taxpayers' burden that should be totally, put upon for this. And I think a good compromise, given the fact that we generally do 2 to 3, is to go 4. I think it shows a little fiscal restraint, and it also helps us, I think, in collective bargaining, which we all know is coming up to the tune of 4 large agreements, and established COLA increases can influence that bargaining that we're going to have with our employees. So that's my entirety of my argument. It's not, I don't feel like it's a hill I have to die on, but I think it's a reasonable thing to bring the 5% recommended COLA from staff down to 4 as fiscal prudence.
No, thank you very much, Tim. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, not at all.
Liz?
I reserve my decision on this until I hear about the percentage tax increase. And there's this nice chart at the end of this discussion that talks about the percentage of increase in taxes from what was proposed in November to what was proposed in today. And it goes from an increase in the budget from 3.5% to 4.3%. And I seem to recall that the select board and the town as a whole likes to keep that increase under 4%. And so the overall discussion is that this is greater than average tax increase. And so, in looking at all of the things that we are adding to the budget in these months, and also in looking to the fact that a lot of the inflation elements are going down, like the cost of gasoline is going down, maybe not necessarily here, but nationwide. I think that this would be something that we could look at to have a 4% increase, mostly because the union negotiations, the contract negotiations are going to start in the spring. And so this is essentially an increase that will start in July 1st, but they're already negotiating increases in that time period.
Thank
So
you.
it almost
Okay.
becomes superfluous.
Yeah. So you're gonna reserve on not voting on this?
Well, no, I want to
I think-
hear from town staff
Okay.
We could
about
come up with that number.
what is generally the tax increase. Did we have an understanding that we tried to keep it at like 3.9 in terms of a percentage increase in the tax from year to year? Maybe the town staff can tell us that. And also, what would be the impact on the tax rate if we went from 5% COLA to 4% COLA?
Okay. Unless other board members want to speak to this before we sort of have that addressed. So the questions are basically kind of what historic tax rates were.
Because what
and
we
then
have.
what would be the impact on the FY24 tax rate should we reduce the COLA from 5% to 4% with the estimated savings of $75,000? Is that
I think
something
it
that we
brings
feel
you.
I
confident?
think it brings us under 4%.
We could
Slightly, maybe.
talk about that. That was the last item in this section, if you wanted to pass over this and.
Okay, do you
And
want to
come back
pass,
to it, or-
pass
Yeah.
over and come back to
That,
it?
I think, would be the easiest way to
Yeah.
discuss it.
Okay, let's pass over and go. Okay, so in that case, yeah, fair enough, Liz. Yeah. All right, so we'll move on to other board members. Are we
Yeah, that
good with
makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
The other stuff is sort of like FYI.
Yeah,
stuff,
so the next one is the number 5, which is a statewide tax rate comparison. This was asked for by Tim and Daniel, and I think I would imagine you've
Right, we're
looked
going to
at.
come back to these. We're passing over to tax rate implication and previously approved decisions, because that is something that is informing Liz's thoughts on COLAs.
So you want to go to that immediately?
Yes, that's what I thought we were doing.
I was.
Changes
hopping-
adopted since November 1st? I don't care which way you want to do it. It's 6 of one, doesn't it?
Well, we just have this. We just have the statewide tax rate comparisons and other items. If there's any other items, that's it. Let's just. No, actually, you know what? Fine. Let's do it. Let's jump to it directly. So, John, do you mind just speaking to that briefly?
Yeah, and so there is a chart in the materials that shows the additional items that you all have discussed and had head nods on, I believe, to include into the new proposed budget, and those are listed on that. I apologize for not having page numbers on this document, but it is the second page of the memo, and that shows eight items that have now been either clarified or added to the proposed budget with a 269,193 impact to the bottom line. And so with those additions, and then now you would need to also add the $5,000 additional amount for the arts fund to that amount. So it would be $274,193, bringing the current proposed budget as of today to $21,758,856. Any questions on those additional items that you've all? So if our assumptions about the use of fund balance, which we discussed last time, are supported as presented in the next chart in this memo, and we're talking about the total increases that referred to previously, then the chart on the last page of the memo shows the impact of this increase from what was proposed in November to what's now on the table tonight. And that would be an increase now of it would be now 95,353, which is something slightly over 4.3% increase. It's 4.3% prior to the addition of the arts fund addition, and that would lead to a tax rate of $56.60 per $100,000 of assessed value. So that is the total impact of what you've seen so far and what we would be proposing if this moved forward.
So the question is, if you took $75,000 off the table, what would be the percentage increase? Would it be less than 4%?
Yes. If you remove 75,000, it would be something, and I don't have a calculator on me. Maybe Kim could help me out, but
Kim?
She's working on it.
Kim's calculating.
Do you have a different benchmark?
But
No, I mean,
to remove 75,000 from that 695, 353.
It's a good benchmark as any.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, we were side conversation.
I'm waiting for a number.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Kim.
And so is it appropriate, I'm actually looking at Bob on this one. Is it appropriate for the board to discuss the other items that were considered that are on the second page of the memorandum that were increases to the proposed budget? Could we discuss them and potentially change them if we wanted to now, considering with all of them, considering the budget implication? Because we weren't able.
You haven't set your final budget
Correct.
recommendation, so yes, you should be able to do that.
Okay.
And frankly, anything that you come up with that is the board's recommendation is going to go to town meeting,
And be subject to.
subject to vote there, so.
Yeah.
Yes, anything's fair game.
Daniel.
Yeah, I just have a clarifying question. So in the list of changes to the budget, one is the bond interest for Living Memorial Park. And we actually had a question from the Finance Committee about this. The discussion we had last week, I expressed a desire that we spend the least amount of interest. And I don't know if I said it out loud, but what I meant was the least amount of interest in total over the span of that bond. And I believe that the option that we kind of like picked in that meeting didn't actually line up with my desire to pay the least amount of interest over time. And so we might need to revisit that and just clarify what the board's intent actually is.
Patrick?
Yeah. I know you got Kim frantically trying to figure out the calculation for that, but she spent a good deal of time today speaking to that question right there. And I think
We'll put it in her
she could
queue.
speak to it intelligently in a way that would help inform the discussion for you.
So, yeah, let's do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Because I missed that.
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
so Kim,
that's no
keep
fun.
working
That's
on what you're working on. We're
And,
gonna
and I
address that.
and I can address it to some extent, Daniel, Ian, if you'd like me to.
Yeah, please.
So, there were two options that we were looking at last week on that, and the first one, the differences were around when the principal starts to get repaid, and the one of the goals was to keep the amount in the FY24 budget lower. But Kim has come up with a slightly different approach of that option 2, which would have us paying principal sooner than the assumption that was in what was in the materials last week. And if that's the case, we can actually bring it even lower than either of those two estimates last week by actually paying principal in fiscal 25. So the question would be, if you're comfortable with that approach, it would be less interest over the 20-year period, but you would have a bigger bill to pay in fiscal 25.
I guess what I would be looking to see happen is that over the time of the bond, we don't pay more interest than we really need to, but also that the debt payments each year are fairly stable, right? I wouldn't want one year to have a spike and then the next year to have a drop.
Okay.
That's my preference, just one person.
If you're all comfortable with us finding the option that's closest to what you were nodding your heads on last time, that is a combination of the least amount of interest overall and not wild swings in the budget in any one year, would that be acceptable? Or?
That is what, I think that's what the board had kind of agreed.
For you four, because I vote.
But yes, the majority of the board
Yeah.
agreed to. So is that agreeable to the rest of the board? Okay. And so would that reflect close to this 39,499? Or is that what
that's
your
the question.
concern?
That's the question.
So the concern was, is this number going to be a lot different than that?
No.
Okay.
No, that'll be about the
It'll be the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kim's not at a
It's-
microphone. She's saying it'll be the same.
Yeah, it's fiscal 25.
That it
where
would have.
We would see an impact, a difference.
Yes. First, we're going to see, do we have a answer to Liz's question, or did we sidetrack you on?
So
You come up to the mic. Yep. Thanks, Kim.
I was just having trouble pulling into a number. So.
Okay, we're still working? Okay.
We're still working.
Okay.
I had Patrick.
Sorry to.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it just needs to come back.
Yeah, my preference would be.
Another thought
Yes.
in keeping the tax rate low is using ARPA for the pool planning project. I think the reason that people were reticent to use ARPA was because of the interest savings wasn't commensurate with the amount of ARPA spending. But this is just a flat out payment. It has no interest associated with it.
Jess, on that?
More broadly,
Okay.
I wonder if we feel strongly about getting the tax rate increase below 4%, if we might ask the town manager to take a look at places where we could find that $75,000 of savings and make some recommendations, or
my initial reaction to that would be, I take the FY24 proposed staff budget without our additions to be what they anticipate. There shouldn't be $75,000 of savings in there. That should be what they're proposing this town needs to run. And so really where we could try to get the tax rate back down to something below 4%, it would be in getting rid of, or not getting rid of, but modifying any of our additions. That's at least my feeling. Other board members may feel differently. I don't know who had their hand up first. Maybe Liz?
I do not have a hand
Oh,
up.
Daniel?
Okay. I think what would be helpful is to see a comparison of, say, the last 5 years' budgets and tax rates and how this one stacks up against them. Because, I don't know, you have that?
John's got it.
Okay.
Yeah, so in 2017 for fiscal year 18, there was a 2.6% increase. In 2018 for fiscal year 19, there was a 4.5% increase. In 2019 for fiscal year 20, it went down 1.3% when the sales tax was added in. In 2020 for fiscal year 21, it was 2.8%. In 2021 for fiscal 22, it was 1%. And 2022 last year for this budget, it was a 1.8%.
Okay. And like, that's good information to have right now. And also, it's hard to digest in the moment, and the public doesn't have that information in front of them.
Well, it sounded like it was really only Liz that wanted to know if it dropped below 4.
Well, I guess I'm questioning, like, I don't believe that there's ever any policy that this current board established that said 4.
I don't think it was
No.
policy, but it was practice.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned the number a couple years.
Yeah, no, but I remember Peter talking about it in terms of a benchmark.
So I'm just gonna pause this right here. Sorry, I got a complaint that when we kind of get, it's not actually that late, but when we get kind of at this stage and get kind of conversational, we have a tendency to move away from the mic and speak softer. So people sometimes have a hard time hearing us. So while I do appreciate the conversational tone and I would encourage you to continue it, I just also would like to make sure that the public,
Sure.
both on Zoom and in the room, can hear us.
I just wanted to say that my recollection is that both town manager and other people have used not as a hard number, but as a benchmark, that the intent, as always, is to weigh our responsibilities in including respect for the tax rate and increases to the tax rate. And so what I'm saying is that, especially with regard to COLA, which, I value our employees and I want the best for them, but in light of the fact that all these contract negotiations are also be ongoing in the same time frame, that we have a lesser COLA and save the taxpayers. And that the negotiations of salary will do the same, serve the same purpose when we're doing all these union negotiations as increasing the COLA.
Thank you, Liz.
It's just like back and forth. Of our town employees, how many are subject to collective bargaining agreements? Approximately. Or exactly?
I can say most of them. I think there are maybe 10% or less that are not covered by one of the 4.
Right.
And then there's also negotiations with the ones who are not, correct? I mean, that has been the practice.
No.
The practice of the board has been to pretty much match
Yeah.
after the fact
Yeah,
to
so,
non-represented employees, for the most part.
so the entirety of the staff is accounted for one way or another after the union negotiations are complete.
Yes.
Which, if you think about the numbers here, you're talking about dropping it a whole percentage point from 5 to 4%, and it would be a savings of $75,000. When you consider how much of our budget is staff, it makes sense that it's a pretty small percentage of our total staff that this would impact, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair argument for Liz's point. It impacts a smaller percentage of the staff. It's still an increase in the COLA, a substantial increase in the COLA. And it does whatever we put the COLA at. And Tim's points too, that it does have a significant impact on our negotiations and collective bargaining. Daniel?
Maybe I'm being like very dense about this. I feel like you walk in. So we had an executive session, and one of the things that we were talking about.
Careful. Do not talk about what we talked about in executive
But you know the topic, right?
Yeah, you can talk about the topic.
Collective bargaining agreements, and here we are in open session, kind of about to, talk about stuff that impacts collective bargaining. It's hard to walk into a collective bargaining agreement in a good position with a 4% when we've been discussing in open session for many months now a 5% COLA. So you're going to walk out of that collective bargaining agreement with an ask for something larger than the 4%, probably, a few percentage points larger. Will we be able to walk out of collective bargaining with something lower than 5? I don't know. I guess I'm kind of confused why this saving $75,000 in a $21 million budget.
I think you're missing a big part.
Well, it might be.
Wait,
So let me finish my point.
Yeah,
Okay.
Let's not.
Yeah. That's partly why I'm asking this question, because maybe I am missing something and you guys can help me with that. Like trying to save $75,000 in a $21.4 million budget and, disrespecting a bunch of unions. I don't think it's worth it.
I don't see it as a disrespect to anyone. I see it somewhat as a duplication of effort because we're proposing this increase now, and then we'll be immediately discussing union contracts where COLA increases will be on the table. So I just see it as duplicative and perhaps unnecessary.
Tim?
Can I just submit that I think folks are overly focused on my comment about collective bargaining and not focused at all about my original comment, which is municipalities shouldn't have the responsibility to, eggs are like twice what they were 6 months ago, but we're not going to tie our COLA increases to the price of eggs or the price of gasoline or price of oil. We should have a slow and steady increase COLA idea, which we have for the last, as far as I know, 10 years. We've never gone up to 5%. So the taxpayers who themselves may not be receiving any COLA increase at all, right, shouldn't be on the hook for just 150 people necessarily. If they should, then the COLA increase should be 12 or 15. And then what happens next year? See, what doesn't happen, unlike Social Security, it goes all the way down to 0, stays there for a few years, and then it goes up to 8.7, but then it goes back down to 0. We don't do that. We have been 2%, 3%, steady as she goes all the way. And that's the kind of reliability that the taxpayers should have a responsibility for. Not to adjust your COLA up and down depending on, how tough it is to afford the mortgage out there. So I think we do treat our employees very well, and I'm trying to, ameliorate this expectation. So leave off collective bargaining. I think that's a real thing, but I think this expectation that the taxpayers have a responsibility to tie to, any kind of measure is a bad precedent. I like 2%, 3%. That's reasonable. If it's a tough year, sure, 3%. But 5 seems like too much, so I throw out 4. So that's going to be my motion, if you'll accept it.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to just make the motion? We'll have a little
Yes.
further discussion on it. That'd be great.
I propose.
I like this.
I propose we modify the staff recommended 5% COLA increase to a 4% COLA increase for fiscal year 2024.
Great. Further discussion, board? Look to any other. The one thing is Liz was sort of waiting on to hear was what the impact of the 75 estimated 75 would be. Were we able to sort of get a sense for what that would be?
3.9.
3.9.
And 3.9 is a number that I feel comfortable.
Okay.
Are we able to translate that into dollars per 100,000?
So we've got 56 was the 3 point.
Doing these calculations in a meeting.
Yeah, it's kind of unfair, but so based on the backup material, so at 4.3% increase over the FY23 budget. So is
I think you could
56
extrapolate between the two. And
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to put a number to it because I'm
$50.
I'm turning on a mathematician. I have no idea. I don't know.
Well, we can certainly
No,
bring
I'm
back
sure
the
it's-
final to you next week.
Somewhere like that.
That's helpful.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't need any more information.
Okay. Any Dick?
I'm going to go back to a half hour ago. So when you had the list of the bond interest payment and everything added up to $269,193, and you had the pool planning money, and then there's an offset. You're going to use fund balance. Why isn't that reflected at the bottom total? So you added everything up, but you didn't remove the 50,000 from the 269,193, which would have an impact on your budget. That number should be $50,000 less because you're using a fund balance that doesn't affect the tax rate. Am I?
It's sort of in the memo.
Yeah.
So it says, 269,193, but the increase in taxes would only be 131,887. And then on the next page in the table, the sort of changes to the budget use that 131,887. Right, Kim?
I did not write this memo.
Okay.
Patrick did.
Yeah. Right, Patrick?
So it's correct that while 269,000 was added to the budget, not all of that represents a tax increase. That's explained in, I think,
The next paragraph.
probably a good deal of detail. It has been incorporated on the last page into, it fundamentally has driven the difference between the budget which was November 1st and the budget which is January 17th.
Yeah.
So,
The sentence
in-
following that chart explains that.
Yeah.
And the amount of money needs to be raised by taxes, 16,619,684, is also reflected in that final chart, so.
correct.
Yeah.
Yep. That is the new tax number.
Okay. And so the numbers that we've been working with the tax increase have been off the numbers that have increased.
They have been correct.
They have been correct. Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Dick. Okay, so if there isn't further discussion, I don't see any hands in Zoom. I think that, so Tim's motion was to modify the proposed COLA increase for the FY24 proposed budget from 5% to 4%. Is that a accurate restating of your? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
That's going to carry 4-1.
You guys are weird.
And then, so while we're just continuing on discussion of other items, Liz, I tend to agree with you that I really liked the discussion we had about the relationship between Living Memorial Park, generational improvements, and the need for pool planning to be a part of it. But that could be a very good use for ARPA funds. While I still am committed to that discussion about use of ARPA funds being in a separate meeting where we're ensuring that we have a clear and transparent process, I think that we should propose to have that as one of the items that we consider for using.
Yeah,
for
great,
ARPA funds.
especially because, as Patrick just pointed out, it's not part of this budget and tax rate.
Yeah, so I would be in favor of moving that to removing that from the fund balance discussion and instead discussing it for ARPA.
I'm reading Mr. Moreland's face.
I'm just trying to keep up here.
Yeah.
So the 50,000 has been added as an expense to the budget. It's being covered at the moment by fund balance, and what
I
happens
think
next?
what they were saying is that they would like it to be considered as an ARPA expense. And when would we do that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I thought it was a fair point from Liz that we discussed a little bit that instead of using fund balance, that we consider using it. I guess that's basically.
Was that when before you knew that it was covered by fund balance, or you don't
No,
want
I
to
knew
use
it was fund balance, but I just thought, well, first of all, it could be added to the amount from the Living Memorial Park project that is using fund balance. But also, just, it seems like the pool planning project is a forward-facing project that would lead to a capital project, which would be appropriate for ARPA funding.
I tend to agree, but I'm not sure where other board members land. If I don't,
It's just a timing thing. Like, I think that we need to give use of ARPA funds ample time and consideration. And like, I'm sure each of us has a couple of pet projects that we've got on the back of an envelope for those funds, but like, we need to like have that conversation.
Yeah.
We began it a while back, and if we could get to it before town meeting for the next phase of it, that'd be lovely. But I don't want to mess with this budget too much at this late stage.
Okay. I don't think I have three then.
You don't, because I'm not really, I was opposed to, I wanted to push off the pool,
whole
LMP project, and the pool thing was just something that made other folks feel more comfortable, I think.
Okay. And I don't think I've got one from Jess either. Okay. And then I think at that point, we're just on the remaining items. If there's anything else that the board wants to consider for the FY24 proposed budget, this is the opportunity to talk about it now. Or else we're.
What about eliminating Selectboard stipends or?
Sure, you want to propose that, Daniel?
No.
You mean it could be anything?
Seems like it.
It could be anything.
Can I just ask a question? And I'm not proposing that this should be part of the budget. Why haven't we ever have spoken about fixing the sidewalk up at the Common? Does anybody remember? Anybody remember ever discussing that? Like, it's been bugging me for the last week that we've never really discussed, at least while I've been on the board, fixing that terrible, it's like a goat path that's paved. Makes no sense whatsoever. So I know, I'm not saying, but when you say anything else, things like this pop into your mind, right? Like,
Well, is that
does
just
anybody
our-
have any memory? Do you guys have any memory of discussing making that like something a wheelchair could roll down?
I'm sure it's
What are you
sidewalk
specifically talking
replacement
about?
plan.
Yeah, it's probably in the sidewalk replacement plan. But which part of the sidewalk?
Well, it's
Because it's
macadam.
never
Yeah.
been changed. It's this little goat path that somehow got blacktopped.
Yeah.
And you literally could trip on it just by if you're able-bodied, but you certainly can't push a stroller on it, for instance.
Wait, where is this?
It's so it's,
You must
it's
walk
on the
on it
common.
every day.
I walk on the common quite a bit.
Do you ever go
I
to
run
the gazebo? It circles. It follows the path of what's the road?
Putney Road?
Park Ave?
I think it's
Linden
Linden
Street?
Avenue.
No.
Linden
Park Place?
Linden
Park
Avenue,
Place.
Park
Yeah.
Place, Park Place.
It's lit.
Cool.
We literally have a sidewalk going to something that's not really a sidewalk. Everybody's nodding. So
I
All right.
propose that the Selectboard has a visit there and we review the condition.
Okay. Anything else? I mean, unless are you making a proposal?
I thought somebody would have an answer, so I'd be
All
like,
right.
oh,
Jess,
I'm going to say a thing.
you gonna say a thing?
I am disappointed that we did not get to consider a position around housing in this budget. It was something that was recommended in the housing plan that we approved this past summer, and housing continues to be a crisis in our community in lots of different ways, from lack of shelter beds to the evictions that we're seeing around town. There is a significant need for someone to be a point person around housing in Brattleboro, outside of social service agencies. And I really hope that someday, maybe next year, we'll get to discuss that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's a fair point. Yeah, I believe that housing and how we discuss housing in Brattleboro is going to continue to be a thing for many, many budgets to come, and working on implementing elements of the housing plan should be something that is a priority, and possibly something like that. Daniel?
Yeah. I work with two people that do exactly the work that you're talking about. One of them is a housing case manager. I work at Sevka on 15 Grove Street. It's right there. We provide, oh my God, wow. It's like, it's over there, Grove Street, just behind the Stone Church in the nice little parsonage. We have a housing case manager, and we have a housing specialist who operates a housing resource center, which provides many of the things that you'll probably imagine in this position would do. We are I guess, social services agency. We're not really, we're a community action agency. Groundworks provides a couple of positions that do something a little similar. There's a landlord liaison position, and Wynnum and Windsor also have housing case managers. Brattleboro Housing Partnerships provides some of this work. I'm a little shocked, honestly, that at this stage in the budget, this is like something that's being brought up now as if we were remiss in talking about it, and it wasn't even mentioned months ago. So like, if this was important, we should have pushed for it. And I think that there's a lot of people in this community already doing really good work in housing, and we can continue to support them and thank them. I don't believe the town is actually the best positioned entity for this. So anyway, I'm a little
I think
frustrated.
it's my fault because I mentioned the goat path and it wasn't.
Liz?
I just want to mention that, one of the hallmarks of our town government is that we support many social service agencies who do good work in the town. That's Groundworks, that's all sorts of agencies, all the ones that Daniel just spoke of. And that's really our policy, is to not replicate and duplicate the work that is being well done by others that we can team with and support. And I think that while the housing, the things that the municipality should be doing on housing, the municipality is doing on housing. One of the things I know that our legislature talks about is that zoning should change throughout the state. And that zoning should change in the manner that Brattleboro has already changed their zoning to be more inclusive and to provide more housing. And so we're already doing that work. We're doing the work that the housing report recommended. We're making it as easy as possible for there to be more housing in town. And this point person, I think, would replicate the work that's already being done in the private and nonprofit sectors.
Other board discussion? All right. Any any remaining items that were on 6 for general fund budget FY24 discussion? Seeing none, I don't think there's any additional motions. Is there anything unclear that happened? Well, there are a lot of unclear things that happened, but I think that it was unclear for staff direction or for the FY24 proposed budget.
No, I understand we'll increase the arts fund 5,000 and we'll reduce the COLA to 4%. And those are the changes tonight that I heard. So.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, and so we're going to move on to new business agenda item 8F, which is the removed from consent agenda item 7E, emergency demolition at 90 Elliot Street, McNeils Brewery, authorized article for RTM warning. Is that John or?
Actually, I'm going to pass it to Patrick, but basically it is a request to put a warning on the representative town meeting for an article that would allow the use of unassigned fund balance for an emergency that occurred with association with a fire recently. So, Patrick, can you have further to explain on that, or?
Not a whole heck of a lot. The article that we're contemplating here is very much in keeping with a similar article that was approved in 2012 in the wake of Tropical Storm Irene.
Yeah.
Right? We had some emergency expenses. In this instance, it's just under $120,000 for the demolition of 90 Elliot Street, the old McNeils pub. And so we would recommend an article be placed on the warning that would allow that expense, which was utterly unforeseen at the time of the creation of this year's budget, to be covered by unassigned general fund balance. And just a reminder, we set aside a certain amount of unassigned general fund balance for emergencies. And so this is such an emergency, except we need the blessing of representative town meeting in order to access it, to spend it on an emergency. Thus, the article that's being proposed.
Bob, did you want to speak to it a little bit more?
I would only add it's up to 120 because, for instance, in the event there were insurance or the other assets with regard to the McNeil estate, which we're unaware of at this time, we would certainly want to recover through those means. So it's not a foregone conclusion that it's going to be paid for from the town. And secondly, there are really 3 mechanisms to raise money in the event that you end up in a deficit, which we don't know whether we would be at the end of this fiscal year or not. But the statute says raise it in increments of 5% unless you either do it the way we're proposing with the fund balance being moved over, transferred, or you can do a bonding resolution to do a refunding bond, which doesn't actually need to go to representative town meeting, but you end up the select board deals with that, and then it ends up going more into next year's fiscal year So from our recommendation, it's best to take the money from the unassigned fund balance, move it over to pay up to that amount, if indeed we need to at the end of the fiscal year.
Liz?
My only concern is to make sure that we're doing everything possible to put a lien on the McNeil property.
So the short answer is yes. We know the attorney who's representing the proposed executor. We don't know what the inventory is for the estate, whether it's anything more than that property. But when that estate is opened, the town intends to make a claim with regard to that. We just don't know whether this is a solvent estate or an insolvent estate. But it's on our radar screen.
Other board members, questions, comments? Hands from the public? Dick?
Bobby kind of answered the question, but we don't know at this point if there's an insurance policy on the structure itself.
We don't at this point. We've asked, but we don't have any answer on that, unfortunately.
And Liz brought up the putting a lien on a property. At what point would we be doing a taking of the property?
Well, first, we would make a claim with regard to the estate, which I understand is being opened. And depending on that and funds available to pay that, it wouldn't be until after we know the extent of the inventory that we would go more of the lien route on that. So, but the point of putting the article on is it's up to that amount. So if there are other means of paying it, those are the first options for paying the town back for that emergency expense.
But we could put a lien on the property and then the owners they hold the property, so we're not going to get our money back. And, I mean, if they don't sell it, the lien is absolutely useless to the municipality.
Right. There are multiple ways of getting to the same end that you're suggesting, but we'll take that under consideration for sure. And I guess that's all I
Okay,
say
thank you.
at this point. But the point is well taken. We certainly want to recover the money if we can. Okay.
And
From the property.
thank you, Dick, and thank you, Bob. And so, just because we're asking for up to 120, the town is going to do its due diligence to ensure that we exercise every other option to recover those
Correct.
funds before we go
Absolutely
from the
correct,
unassigned. Yeah. And if the town were to actually somehow take ownership of the property, is the way that the town would recoup on it would be to sell it? Is that?
It's theoretically possible, and there are some other options that in the event that the town does end up taking it or ends up with it as a result of a claim, that the town may have some plans of, if that were to occur, of adding that to existing lands that the town owns for purposes of potential housing.
Yeah.
That is I hesitate even mentioning that because that's quite down the road in this process of recovering the money spent.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Other questions? I don't see any hands in Zoom or the room. In that case, I think, okay, so.
we do need a motion on this.
Yeah, and I think I can maybe.
Let's do that.
Yeah, so I'm going to move that the select board put a warning on the article, put a warning for an article for RTM to the effect of to see if the town will appropriate up to $120,000 from the unassigned fund balance to defray the town's portion of costs associated with the demolition of 90 Elliot Street, McNeils Brewery after the fire. Does that motion work, Bob? Okay. Board members, any further discussion? Seeing it as my motion, I won't reread it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's going to carry 5-0. Thank you very much. And with that, I think we just have one more motion. Liz?
I move to adjourn.
Liz has moved to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's going to carry 5-0. Thank you very much to BCTV. Thank you to Patrick for running the Zoom. Thank you to John for your third meeting with the Brattleboro Select Board.
Chicken them off.